Restart. Spider-Man. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 1. Spider-Man. Want to play the resurrection match? New York, the top of the Empire State Building. Look carefully. This red and blue Spider-Man is called Xia Luo. In the night, he quietly climbed up the antenna tower on the top of the building. The dark clouds covered the moon, and Charlotte Parker found a place to sit down and raised her hand to take off her hood. The strong wind blew the boy's hair. He overlooked the neon city, took a deep breath of the cool night air, and then took out his mobile phone from his collar. Friends who have been Spider-Man know that Spider-Man has no trouser pockets. Turn on the phone. Spider-Man, I know who you are. I'm your father. Listen, let's meet at the Empire State Building at 10 o'clock tonight. Otherwise I will kill everyone around you without mercy. The mobile phone screen showed this paragraph, and the one who sent the message was Norman Osborn, without any disguise. Norman Osborn, a famous New York entrepreneur, Harry's father, and also the super criminal who has recently plunged the city into chaos, the Green Goblin. And he, Charlotte, a time traveler, is now called Charlotte Parker. Uncle Ben, Aunt May, Harry, all the necessary configurations are complete. He was bitten by a mutant spider not long ago, and naturally became Spider-Man. Super strength, reaction speed, spider silk shooting, spider sense, climbing ability, all of them are also perfect. But unfortunately, these abilities are too weak compared to the Spider-Man in the movie. Spider sense is sometimes effective and sometimes not. Reaction speed is not much faster than ordinary people, and strength is not enough to lift a small car. Only spider silk and climbing ability are barely qualified. The weakest Spider-Man is now targeted by the craziest Green Goblin. Charlotte shook his head slightly. After becoming Spider-Man, he just used his superpowers to cause trouble to the gangsters and borrow some money by the way. He didn't have time to offend Norman. This guy didn't know how to find out his identity and asked him to meet here. He accepted the threat. Just a day ago, Norman, who became the Green Goblin, bombed the Osborn shareholder meeting. Harry was also there at the time. Norman was completely crazy and could do anything. Spider-Man's fate is tragic. He doesn't want to lose the people around him. Family, friends, lovers, all of these will encounter accidents because of the identity of Spider-Man. Spider-Man is lonely. In his new life, Charlotte did not want to accept this tragic fate. He tried to avoid this fate and stayed away from any spider-related laboratories and biological exhibitions, but he was still bitten by a mutant spider that appeared inexplicably and eventually became Spider-Man. It was also because he became Spider-Man that at that moment, he found the only way to break the tragic fate. Sacrifice yourself. Only by sacrificing yourself can the people around him be safe. So even though he had only been familiar with the power of his body for a short time and knew that he was no match for the Green Goblin, he still came. He did not say goodbye to Uncle Ben and Aunt May, nor did he persuade Harry to stop Norman's actions, because he knew that every struggle might make the result worse. His sacrifice was already doomed. Only in this way can he gain more powerful power to protect the people around him. While thinking, fire roared in the night sky. Charlotte looked up and saw the Green Devil speeding towards him on the flying skateboard under his feet. Boom soon, Norman, wearing the Green Devil armor, floated high in the sky, and his evil golden eyes looked at Charlotte in front of him. Harry's good friend, they have met many times. He liked this young man who was both good in character and learning. He had thought about how lucky it would be if Charlotte was his own child. But there was one thing about the other party that gave him a headache. Hi, Charlotte, I'm glad you're here. I need your help. His tone was full of kindness. He took off the devil mask without disguising it, revealing the vicissitudes of life after being tortured by illness. He needed Spider-Man, but he didn't have to. Seeing that the other party didn't take action immediately, Charlotte grinned. It's you, Uncle Norman. Is this your armor? It's really cool. Although the design is not perfect, it is simple and personalized. Coupled with the excellent air control performance of the flying skateboard, it has a devilish flavor. It's a pity that there are some problems with the polishing of the outer armor. How about this? You take off the armor and let me help you polish it again. Actually, you can keep silent. Norman's forehead was exposed with blue veins, and he was very troubled by Charlotte's nonsense literature. Except for Harry, few people can stand this guy. Seeing this, Charlotte spread his hands and smiled. Well, actually I want to say that your armor is not as good looking as mine. The moment he finished speaking, Norman's eyes struggled for a moment, and then suddenly a trace of a grim smile appeared, and he threw a pumpkin bomb with his backhand. Boom. The pumpkin bomb flashed, and Charlotte's body instantly turned into a grim skeleton in the light, and then was shaken into powder by the aftermath of the explosion. Under the antenna tower, the damaged red and blue battlesuit was swept into the night by the high-altitude wind, which seemed to indicate that Spider-Man's tragic fate would end here. Yes, your battlesuit is very beautiful, very beautiful. Norman showed a smug smile, and then he held his head and screamed nervously, regretting that he was too impulsive. Oh my god, what did I do? Poor Charlotte, I should have told you something serious first. The next moment, the regret on his face turned into a hideous smile. After putting on the devil mask again, Norman stepped on the flying vehicle and disappeared into the night. I'm the most terrible demon, and I never need anyone's help, ha ha ha. The devilish laughter echoed in the night sky, and the dual personality switched back and forth, which was chilling. The stars were shining, and the huge spider web spanned the entire universe. On one of the spider silks, Charlotte, who was hanging upside down on the spider web, opened his eyes. He moved his hands and checked his intact body again. Recalling the scene just now, Charlotte hugged his arms, with a helpless look on his face. The power of the pumpkin bomb was beyond his imagination, and he himself was pitifully weak. He couldn't beat it. He couldn't beat it at all. Fortunately, the moment he became Spider-Man, his gold finger also arrived. Congratulations on receiving the invitation letter for the resurrection match. Do you want to participate in the resurrection match? Yes, no, the system information appeared in front of him, and Charlotte put on the spider mask and clicked yes, without hesitation. The resurrection match, as the name suggests, can be resurrected after winning the resurrection match. But this is not his real gold finger. His real plug ending. You have entered the resurrection match scene. While thinking, the void swallowed up Charlotte's body, and the next moment he came to New York under the night sky. Scene. The Amazing Spider-Man Universe. Mission. Go to the clock tower and save Gwen Stacy who fell from the building. Reward 1. 1 resurrection quota. Reward 2. Strength plus 10 tons. Competitors. Peter Parker, Chitauri Soldiers X10, Tony Stark, Charlotte Parker. Countdown. 30 seconds. In the night, the red and blue phantom flew on the spider silk and fell outside the glass curtain wall of the high-rise building. The glass curtain wall reflected the relevant information of this resurrection competition and the plot of Gwen's death in the movie. This multiverse has another Spider-Man, Peter Parker. After he defeated Electro, Harry, who became the Green Goblin, inherited the fine tradition of the Green Goblin family. He took Gwen Stacy hostage in front of Peter Parker to vent his anger and dissatisfaction with his friend's failure to save her. In the Battle of the Clock Tower, Gwen fell from a tall building, and Peter Parker failed to save the person he loved most. His proud spider sense saw every moment of her death. Let me tell you in advance that the truth about the protagonist becoming Spider-Man is in Chapter 14. Chapter 2. Nano Armor, Lizard Parker. Outside the glass curtain wall, Charlotte narrowed his eyes and stared at the countdown. Among the contestants of this resurrection match, although the Chitauri soldiers are just a small part of Thanos' men, they not only have flying machines, but also have alien weapons that cannot be underestimated. They have an absolute advantage in numbers. And there is Peter Parker. Is this another Spider-Man? As for Tony Stark, Iron Man's air control ability completely crushes the flying machines of the Chitauri soldiers, and he is the biggest competitor in this resurrection match. Meeting such a difficult guy in the first resurrection match is no less than playing a peak match for Charlotte. But not being able to beat him does not mean that you can't win. Dada. Soon, as the countdown displayed on the glass curtain wall ended, Charlotte turned over and jumped down, and at the same time, he shot out spider silk and flew down to the street. Swish. With 2 spider silks shot out from both hands, to lock onto the street lights on both sides of the street. Charlotte kept retreating while pulling the spider silk. With the help of the super toughness of the spider silk, his body suddenly turned into a cannonball and rushed into the night sky with the blessing of the spider silk slingshot. Catapult and take off. Boom. The wind whistled, and Charlotte's body shuttled between high-rise buildings, and the colorful neon lights of the city flashed by quickly. When he first became Spider-Man, this feeling was very wonderful. It was both exciting and nervous. When practicing, he was afraid of accidentally falling from a high altitude, but he could not resist this thrilling extreme sport. But now, he has mastered this ability with ease. Wow, it's Spider-Man. Tapery. Before the kinetic energy was about to run out, Charlotte saw the opportunity to launch spider silk and fly between the steel jungle, causing passers-by to scream wherever he passed. No, Spider-Man just finished fighting with Electro. How could he be here? Suddenly, such a voice came from the crowd, and everyone quickly turned on their mobile phones and looked at the paralyzed Power City in the live broadcast screen with confusion. Strange, this is Area C. How could Spider-Man appear here? Everyone was confused. Boom. The next moment, a flame roared over the heads of the citizens, and a heat wave rolled up in an instant. Oh my god, what is that? Cool armor. As everyone exclaimed, several flames flashed across the night sky again. Oh my god, what happened? What kind of monsters are these? Aliens have invaded. Citizens caught a glimpse of the humanoid monster holding a gun blade on the aircraft, and they all looked horrified. Here, the nano armor flew past the tall building at high speed, and Tony was still confused. Jarvis, have you heard of the resurrection match? Sir, I'm Friday. Tony reacted, sorry, I didn't mean it. Jarvis has disappeared, which is the result of his mistake. He has always felt guilty. It's okay, sir, this is not a game. Please take this competition seriously. Friday reminded. I understand. Lock the location of the clock tower. As he spoke, Tony thought of the panel information he had just seen, and a complicated look appeared on his face. Peter Parker's name was actually on the list of contestants. He had successfully snapped his fingers, and Thanos' army had disappeared. But how did Peter die? And there is also Spider-Man in this world. Is it a hallucination before death? On the busy street, red and blue figures flew by. Swoosh. Soon, Charlotte flew to the roof of a residential building, far away from the bustling city. Looking around, dozens of meters away, a 100-meter high clock tower stood in the searchlight. This is the place where the Green Goblin fought with the second generation of the Amazing Spider-Man, and it is also the scene of Gwen's death. There was no movement, which meant that Harry had not reached the clock tower yet. There is still time. Catcher. Suddenly, there was a rustling sound from the roof under the night sky, and Charlotte felt a chill on his back, as if he was being stared at by a terrible beast. His unreliable spider sense finally returned to normal. When Norman took action, this thing did not react at all. Swoosh. In an instant, Charlotte followed his body's instinct, raised his hand and shot Spider Silk to fly up, and the next moment he saw the terrible creature rushing out of the darkness, and brushed past him. Bang. Bang. The green humanoid lizard crashed down from the roof, crushing the cement with its terrible force, splashing large pieces of rubble. Charlotte, who had landed on a nearby high-rise building, turned around and saw the hideous and terrifying green lizard at a glance. The dangerous breath hit him, and the hair on his arm stood up instantly. Lizard man? He frowned. No, not Kurt Connors. Charlotte reacted instantly, and Dr. Lizard in this world had been defeated by Spider-Man. He thought of one of the contestants, Peter Parker. In a certain multiverse, Peter Parker is not Spider-Man, but the villain Lizard Man. Looking at the opposite side, the Lizard Man covered with green scales saw that he missed the attack, and he slowly stood up, with a horrifying look in his eyes. Spider-Man? The lizard monster spoke human words. The green scales on his face squirmed, and the madness in his eyes subsided slightly, turning into complexity. Why is Spider-Man a man? The sharp nails of his 10 fingers kept rubbing, and it was obvious that he was very uneasy. Charlotte glanced at the little green demon flying overhead, and tried to communicate with the big lizard in front of him. Hi, my name is Charlotte. Charlotte Parker. The Spider-Man you know should not be me, but I can guarantee with Spider-Man's integrity that I will not discriminate against your scales and claws, because this is my favorite element all the time. By the way, have you seen Godzilla, the big monster that roars and spits? I think you can go to Sony or Legendary Pictures to discuss cooperation. The strange guy was chattering, but the figure of another Spider-Man emerged in the mind of Lizard Parker. That was a beautiful girl who loved drums. She was also Spider-Man, an idol worshipped by everyone. Everyone liked her very much. He was no exception. He dreamed of becoming her friend one day. But he was a cripple, and he was not qualified to be her friend, because he lost his right hand since childhood. But one day, he met Professor Kurt Connors, who also lost an arm. The lizard serum developed by the other party could allow the injector to obtain the regeneration ability of the lizard, grow an arm again, and gain powerful strength. In order to qualify to be friends with Spider-Man, he took the risk of injecting lizard serum and finally became a monster. He will never forget the way she looked at him. Shock, sympathy, fear, disappointment. He was going crazy. This was not the result he wanted, but it was irreversible. No, it could be saved. At the last moment of his life, he chose to use his death in exchange for her continued life. He died at the hands of Kurt Connors, who also turned into a lizard monster. But it doesn't matter, she is safe. He used his life to prove that he was qualified to be her friend. She will definitely survive. Definitely, just like Gwen in this world. With him, no matter which world Gwen is in, she must survive. Thinking of this, Lizard Parker's eyes gradually became firm. Then, he looked at Charlotte, who was still talking nonsense, with a fierce light in his eyes. Gwen must survive, but you, Charlotte Parker, Spider-Man should not be like you. You have ruined all my beautiful fantasies about Spider-Man. I will tear you apart. Boom. As soon as Peter the Lizard finished speaking, the roof of the building shook violently, and the concrete floor cracked. The lizard monster had already turned into a cannonball, and crossed the residential building in an instant. Tear you apart. Although Lizard Parker was angry, it seemed more like he was trying to cover up his morbidity and helplessness after becoming a monster. Charlotte immediately shut up. He was prepared. At the moment, when the lizard monster attacked, he had already jumped up, avoiding the attack, while continuously shooting spider silk towards the clock tower. In the clock tower, the battle between Harry and Peter Parker had already begun, and the next step was the key to the resurrection match. Boom! At this time, the flames roared. In the air, Charlotte's figure crossed with Tony for a moment. Peter. As soon as Tony opened his mouth, the Chitauri soldiers behind him attacked in a flying vehicle, and the technological gun blades in their hands shot dense energy beams at the two. Shit. Boom. Fire exploded. Tony condensed in a no-metal shield with his backhand to resist energy damage, while Charlotte was hit by a beam of energy, and turned into a parabola, and rolled down the residential building. Gaga. Fake. I caught you. In the night, Lizard Parker ran past, and Charlotte's figure was swept away by the violent monster. Chapter 3, The Battle for Gwen. You have been eliminated, and cannot get a chance to revive. You will be rewarded with plus 0.1 tons of strength, 9 chances to restart remaining. Do you want to restart? Returning to the huge spider web again. Charlotte slowly exhaled and raised his hand to click restart. Restarting the resurrection match. This is his real cheat. And every time you restart, you can get a small amount of rewards. A little bit will add up to a lot. One day, you will catch up with other Spider-Men. The mysterious power surged into Charlotte's body, and there was a crisp sound of bones in Charlotte's body. His whole body was unobstructed, and his muscle density increased a lot. His strength was only a pitiful 1 ton before. The increase of 0.1 tons did not mean much to other Spider-Men, but for him, a 1/10th attribute improvement was already very good. With the increase in strength, physical fitness and various attributes will passively increase, which makes Charlotte feel relieved. He does not have to worry about losing balance and collapsing due to the sudden increase of a certain attribute. If he wins this resurrection match, 10 tons of strength will be enough to get him out of the predicament of being targeted by the Green Goblin. After this test, he knew that the contestant Peter Parker was a lizard man. The opponent's strength was terrifying, at least more than 20 tons, and his defense was even more terrifying. Although the speed was a little slow, if the spider sense did not react in time, Charlotte would not be able to dodge the opponent's attack. The firepower of the Chitauri soldiers was also fierce enough. Charlotte could barely fight 1 or 2, but he certainly could not withstand 10. As for Tony, Iron Man with nano armor, could it be Tony in Avengers 3? Charlotte guessed. This is a bit troublesome. The firepower of the nano armor is enough to top the MVP of the resurrection match. If it was Iron Man who snapped his fingers in Avengers 4, Thanos would have to take a big beating. He has no chance of winning at all. It is estimated that, if the opponent wins this resurrection match, it will be Avengers 6. We have to keep trying. After a moment of thinking, he was swallowed by the void again, and came to New York where the Amazing Spider-Man is. Scene: Amazing Spider-Man Universe, mission, go to the clock tower, and save Gwen who fell from the building. The second resurrection match, still the same system prompt. Charlotte flew and landed on the curtain wall of the tall building. Because the resurrection match had not yet begun, he could not leave the spot. Recalling the last resurrection match, he guessed that Tony and the Chital soldiers, who were farther away from the clock tower. Lizard Parker's movement speed was relatively slow, but he arrived at the clock tower almost at the same time as Charlotte, and his berth position was obviously closer than everyone else. The time for the group to arrive at the clock tower was about the same, which should not be random. 30 seconds later, the countdown ended. Charlotte turned over and jumped down from the tall building. As the wind whistled past, he shot spider silk from his wrist and flew down and rushed into the dark alley downstairs. This time he didn't plan to go up first. However, as soon as he landed in the alley, he saw a disheveled man and woman hiding behind a trash can with panicked faces, cursing at the figure in the dark. Shit, there is a pervert peeping at us. Get out, or I will interrupt your little guy, Charlotte. Oh my god, is this so exciting? Then, several flames roared over the sky above their heads. In the alley, Charlotte glanced at the man and woman who were still cursing, raised his hand and shot her spider silk to pull the trash can in front of the two people. Asshole, what are you doing? Damn it, I'm going to flush your eyes into the sewer. Swish. The spider silk shot again, and the clothes in the hands of the two people disappeared. In front of the two people, Charlotte blew a whistle, wrapped the clothes of the two people in the spider silk, and then hung them outside the 10-meter high wall. Goodbye, to Shy Guys. Remember to cover your face next time. As he said, he jumped onto the high wall and flew away with the spider silk. Quickly rushing to the clock tower, Charlotte's eyes were always fixed on the flickering fire in front. In the night sky, the Chitauri soldiers kept shooting energy beams at Tony, but Tony easily dodged them. Following all the way, Charlotte was soon pulled away. Oh, Spider-Man. No, Spider-Man is still in the Power City. After a while, amid the exclamations of passers-by, Charlotte landed slowly in a residential building near the clock tower. At this time, the clock tower was already bustling. Peter, we are best friends, but even so, you won't give me even a drop of blood. So, hahaha, you also have a taste of despair. On the rooftop, Harry, with a hideous face like a monster, grinned at Peter Parker and threw Gwen in his hand directly from the rooftop. No! Peter Parker exclaimed and jumped down the clock tower without hesitation. Spider silk shot out one after another, and Gwen, who was falling at a high speed, was rolled up by the spider silk. Boom. Before Peter Parker could take Gwen, the pumpkin bomb exploded, and the surging flames raged. The spider silk was melted by the high temperature, and Gwen fell rapidly with a heat wave. Hahaha, despair, Peter. Harry laughed. No. Peter Parker's eyes widened. He was about to break through the explosion flames, but was stopped by Harry, and could not rescue him in time. At this moment, a green lizard monster quickly climbed up the clock tower, and then leaped towards Gwen. Professor Kurt. Peter Parker exclaimed. Professor Kurt had already, however, just as Lizard Parker was about to catch Gwen, the night sky roared with fire, and Lizard Parker was blasted straight into the clock tower by the fierce firepower. Boom. The clock tower exploded, and tiny gears flew all over the sky. Gwen's figure gradually disappeared from Lizard Parker's sight. No, the next moment, Tony flew over from the air at a high speed, and the nano weapons floating behind him were even faster. In the blink of an eye, he had already swept behind Gwen and lifted her up from the air. Was that a lizard just now? Tony blinked. Sir, I have searched for you. Lizards are reptiles of the genus lizard of the family lizard of the order Squamata. Friday, you are humorous again. Thank you. Seeing the nano armor swooping down, Harry was extremely angry and threw a large number of pumpkin bombs. You weird guys can't save her. No. Peter Parker's face changed, and when he flew, he shot Spider Silk, but could only grab 2 of the pumpkin bombs. Boom boom, the clock tower exploded one after another, and Peter Parker was swept away by the heat wave of the explosion. The huge clock slowly fell down, and then fell towards Tony. What a trouble. Jarvis, no. Friday. Understood, sir. The nano metal on his shoulder squirmed, and several macro missiles bombarded the falling clock. Boom, the debris fell all over the sky. Just as Tony was about to raise his hand to block the sharp glass for Gwen, the Chitauri soldiers had already come. The laser weapons kept shooting, and Tony had to dodge and then control the nano device to release fierce firepower. For him, it was not difficult to deal with these miscellaneous soldiers. But Gwen didn't have so much time. Bang! In an instant, the clock tower made a loud noise, and Lizard Parker knocked a hole in the wall and flew out again. This time, Lizard Parker finally caught the falling Gwen, and a smile appeared on his face. I won't let you die. In Lizard Parker's arms, Gwen looked at the hideous monster in front of her with lingering fear, but still found a trace of sadness in the other's eyes. It was a very strange look, like boom. The next second, the floor at the foot of the bell tower shattered, and in the spider web-like pit, Gwen in Lizard Parker's arms was bleeding from all 7 orifices. His body was not able to cushion Gwen's fall. No, looking at Gwen, who was twitching and spitting blood, Lizard Parker roared to the sky and wailed with his head in his hands. On the balcony of the bell tower, Charlotte, who was a step late, was silent. Good guy. Everyone rushed to save people, but they ended up dying more miserably. Forget it. Restart. Chapter 4. Spider-Man's 100 Ways to Die. You have been eliminated and cannot get a chance to revive. You will be awarded plus 0.1 tons of strength. There are 8 chances to restart. Do you want to restart? In the 3rd revival match, Charlotte still chose to run into the alley first. Shit, there is a pervert. The 2 people in the alley just started talking, and Charlotte skillfully hung their clothes on the high wall. I reminded you, remember to cover your face next time. After saying that, he jumped up the tall building, leaving the 2 people looking at each other. When did he say that? I don't know him. Oh no, that's Spider-Man. He found us. Relax, he's not your husband. It's okay. After the little episode, Charlotte successfully came to the vicinity of the clock tower. At this time, a group of people started a melee for who could save Gwen first. It was still not much different from the last situation. Boom boom, the fire roared, and the clock tower exploded continuously. Tony was always showing off his nano armor, while distractingly observing Peter Parker, as if he treated this revival match as a game. The Chitauri soldiers besieged Tony, and had no interest in winning this resurrection match. They strictly followed the orders of Lord Thanos, and must destroy Iron Man. In the chaos, Peter Parker was entangled by Harry, and occasionally forced Harry back. When he wanted to rescue Gwen, he was intercepted by the Chitauri soldiers. Spider-Man is also a member of the Avengers, and is also on their must-kill list. This time, it was Lizard Parker who hugged Gwen at the last moment. Before the 2 fell to the ground, Charlotte flew to the balcony of the clock tower and shot Spider Silk with both hands, to hang the 2 in the air. Handsome lizard, give her to me quickly, she will die if you do this. Peter. In Lizard Parker's arms, Gwen was surprised when she saw Charlotte. Obviously, she misunderstood something. Charlotte struggled to drag the 2, her muscles tensed, and her feet couldn't stop slipping. Now is not the time to play Beauty and the Beast. Cooperate with each other. The moment he shouted, the spider silk suddenly broke, and he also leaned back because of the broken spider silk, and then was hit on the head by the flying gear. Charlotte. The quality of this spider silk is too poor. Forget it, let's restart. You have been eliminated, and cannot get a place to revive. You will be rewarded with plus 0.1 tons of strength. There are 7 chances to restart. Do you want to restart? The 4th resurrection match is still the original plan. Charlotte rushed into the alley and snatched the clothes of the 2 people with ease. Remember to cover your face next time. In the chaos of the clock tower, it was still the last moment. Charlotte used spider silk to lock Gwen in the arms of Lizard Parker and did not drag the two together. "Hand her over to me quickly, she will die." Before he finished speaking, the spider silk tore off a piece of Gwen's clothes and the two fell from the building together. "Charlotte, you can't use spider silk to save people, especially Spider-Man. Restart. You have been eliminated and cannot get a place to revive. You will be rewarded with plus 0.1 tons of strength. There are 6 chances to restart. Do you want to restart?" In the 5th resurrection match, Charlotte rushed into the alley, shot spider silk to block the mouths of the two people, and hung them upside down under the billboard at the entrance of the alley. The flames roared above his head, and he flew to catch up. The same plot was happening. After Lizard Parker caught Gwen, Charlotte shot several spider silks in a row to lock the two people falling. This time the spider silk did not break. Before Charlotte could make any move, the sky above the clock tower exploded again, and the Chitauri aircraft fell diagonally, and Charlotte's figure was instantly enveloped by the explosion. You have been eliminated and cannot get a resurrection spot. The reward is plus 0.1 tons of strength. There are 5 chances to restart. Do you want to restart? Charlotte. After 5 restarts, his strength increased to 1.5 tons, but he was still not qualified to officially join the Gwen battle. If he was dragged into the battle without paying attention, his small body would not be able to withstand it. Maybe he could try to stop Harry in advance and save the abducted Gwen. But the mission required him to go to the clock tower to rescue Gwen, who had fallen from the building. Even if he succeeded in rescuing Gwen, he would not be able to win the resurrection match. He thought about it. After so many restarts, he found that the Chitauri soldiers would only attack Tony and Peter Parker. Harry's real target was Peter Parker. Tony seemed to be paying attention to Spider-Man and missed the best time to save Gwen when he was distracted. To be precise, Tony did not take the resurrection match seriously. Needless to say, Peter Parker was in a more chaotic situation than in the movie, and he had no time to save Gwen. So only Lizard Parker was left. He could see that this guy didn't want to save Gwen just for the resurrection quota. Lizard Parker, who was thick-skinned and tough, was also the most likely person to save Gwen in the chaos. Maybe he could start with this guy. Thinking about it, Charlotte clicked restart. It was still a repeated plot. Charlotte rushed to the clock tower and the battle started again. He locked onto Lizard Parker, who was climbing the wall, and immediately flew to the outer wall of the clock tower. "Hey, handsome lizard, I have a small project to discuss with you. Let's talk about how to save Gwen. You should have time now. After all, you can't find a job like this," Charlotte said, imitating the other's movements and quickly climbing the wall. "Get out." The irritable Lizard Parker roared, and his long tail swept across, and Charlotte was immediately blasted into the wall by the long tail. The spider sense failed. In the human-shaped pit, the half-dead Charlotte watched Gwen die on the spot again, and he was speechless. This guy is completely unable to communicate when he is excited. Boom, the next moment, the Chitauri soldiers came, and Charlotte lost consciousness again. The 7th resurrection match. At the moment the countdown ended, Charlotte did not act according to his previous thoughts. He rushed to the clock tower at a high speed, and did not stop at the residential buildings near the clock tower. Swoosh, the spider silk shot out, and Charlotte rushed into the clock tower. Kakaka in the night, the green monster broke through the window, and rushed straight to Charlotte. Spider-Man. Lizard Parker flew up, and used the momentum to jump up the tall building to intercept Charlotte. Charlotte shrugged. "My name is Charlotte Parker. Our goal is the same. We can work together to save Gwen." "Fake. You are not qualified." Lizard Parker's eyes began to become dangerous, and Charlotte, who had expected it, shot spider silk to a higher floor without saying anything. There was no way to communicate, so other methods could only be used. "I will tear you apart." The irritable Lizard Parker quickly chased and violently hit the mechanical gears in the clock tower wherever he passed. A large number of gears fell from the tall building, and Lizard Parker, who was attracted by the attention, did not notice Gwen, who was thrown by Harry. Boom. The pumpkin bomb flashed, and the top of the clock tower exploded one after another. With the arrival of the Chitauri soldiers, the surging flames shattered the glass, and the nano device carried Gwen into the clock tower. "Peter!" Panicked Gwen shouted, and Lizard Parker and Peter Parker responded at the same time. Gwen. Gwen. Peter Parker threw Harry aside and jumped down, and Lizard Parker also jumped towards Gwen without hesitation. Gears fell from the sky, and the two met in midair. Get out of the way. Lizard Parker's claws tore the gears in front of him, and then swept his long tail across, vowing to crush this imposter. What? Lizard Parker was coming fiercely, and Peter Parker did not dare to be careless. He used spider silk to help him flexibly shuttle between the gears, avoiding Lizard Parker, and rushing towards Gwen again. Gaga, Peter, you won't succeed. The Green Goblin attacked, and the aircraft under Harry's feet launched macro missiles, and the scene was covered by explosions again. Boom no. In the horrified eyes of Lizard Parker and Peter Parker, the spider silk flew past, and another red and blue figure rushed towards Gwen, who was about to be engulfed by the flames against the explosion. Puff puff. Deer fragments flew, and the moment Charlotte hugged Gwen, her back was already bloody. With his injured body supported, Charlotte held the spider silk with one hand, and held Gwen with the other hand to land steadily, and then his legs softened. Beside him, Gwen's body twitched, and a lot of red oozing from her abdomen. Her eyes were filled with infinite fear, and she wanted to speak, but her mouth was blocked by blood. Turning her head, and seeing Spider-Man, who was also on the verge of death beside her, the fear in her eyes gradually disappeared. At this moment, Charlotte also saw every detail of Gwen's death. Chapter 5 Winning the Resurrection Match. You have been eliminated, and cannot be resurrected. You will be awarded plus 0.1 tons of strength. There are 3 chances to restart. Do you want to restart? Charlotte scratched her head in front of the huge spider web. She felt that Gwen died too hastily this time. But she thought about it, and it made sense. The battle on the scene was too intense. In the explosions one after another, it would be difficult for ordinary people to survive if they were swept by the debris. Even he died in such a chaotic scene. But this time it was almost there. Come again. In the 8th resurrection match, Charlotte rushed to the clock tower and encountered Lizard Parker. 2 figures jumped up the tall building one after another, leaving a mess along the way. I'm going to tear you apart. Grumpy Lizard handsome guy, our goal is to save Gwen. I will save her. You don't have to worry about it. Fake. Bang. With a loud noise, Lizard Parker flew over and pounced on Charlotte, looking at the Spider-Man in front of him with a cruel smile. Tear you apart. Sure enough, you are just a monster. The moment Charlotte opened his mouth, Lizard Parker was stunned. What did you say? He began to roar angrily. Charlotte smiled. I said, she's dying now. As he spoke, he turned his head to avoid the flying gears. Still calm. His spider sense was still unreliable, and he could avoid the gears because of his experience, accumulated from restarting again and again. Seeing that Lizard Parker was getting more and more irritable, Charlotte pointed out the window. In 2 seconds, she will appear there. What? Lizard Parker was stunned, and as Charlotte raised 2 fingers in succession, Gwen's figure flashed past the window. Gwen. At this moment, Lizard Parker didn't care about anything else, and flew through the window without hesitation, and pounced on Gwen. Charlotte stood up, and clapped his hands, raised his head and carefully observed the battle situation in the clock tower, without participating in any fight. The reward is almost eaten. You have been eliminated, and cannot get a resurrection spot. The reward strength plus 0.1 tons. There are 2 restart opportunities left. Do you want to restart? Restart. In the 9th resurrection match, Charlotte still did not participate in the operation to save Gwen, but relied on prediction to avoid the dense energy beams flying all over the sky until he flew to the top floor. If he had no experience in restarting, he would not be able to do it anyway. Mr. Stark, he shouted at Tony, and Tony trembled immediately. Peter, looking back and forth at the 2 Spider-Men at the scene, Tony looked at Charlotte with mixed emotions. Only the Spider-Man could call out his name. The next moment, Charlotte ran into the clock tower. Tony came to his senses, and he activated the armor to the maximum power without hesitation, to bomb the Chitauri soldiers. Without looking back at the explosion, Tony rushed into the clock tower quickly. Boom, the clock tower exploded continuously, and gears flew all over the sky. On the huge gear, Tony locked his eyes on one of the Spider-Men. I saw the rubble flying. Charlotte whistled happily, dodged the flying gears in an orderly manner, and strolled leisurely in the melee. Gap, Peter. At this time, Harry, riding a skateboard, swooped down, but crashed into the spider silk that had been set up in advance. Shit. Bang! Harry's figure bounced back and forth and crashed into the ruins of the clock tower. The real Peter Parker and the lizard Parker flew towards Gwen. After a fight, the two watched Gwen being swept away by the spider silk and fell into Charlotte's hands. As if it was rehearsed in advance, everything was under the control of the other party. After restarting again and again, Charlotte has found the real way to open the plugin. What? Peter Parker looked at the Spider-Man in front of him, and his heart was extremely horrified. The opponent's spider sense was outrageous. In such a complicated situation, the opponent could actually predict all the gear attacks. Who is he? Lizard Parker became more and more irritable and didn't think so much. Damn, there is another fake. You are not allowed to take Gwen away. The monster flew over the ruins one after another, and the sharp gears scratched dense blood marks on his body, but still couldn't stop any of his actions. The evil wind blew, but Charlotte didn't care. She flew towards the ground by herself with the help of Spider Silk. Because he had a helper. Boom. Just when Lizard Parker was about to tear Charlotte apart, arc pulse energy fell from the sky and blasted Lizard Parker into the ruins. Disgusting guy, stay away from him. Tony shouted coldly. Damn Iron Man. Lizard Parker roared and climbed out of the ruins to continue chasing. The attack just now did not completely make him lose his ability to move. Tony wanted to stop him, but was entangled by the surviving Chitauri soldiers. Leave her to me. Gears fell like rain, and Lizard Parker was like a violent beast ravaging the clock tower. Peter Parker swooped down to stop Lizard Parker, but Harry, who followed closely, knocked him away. Haha, your opponent is me. Peter, I said, I will let you taste the pain of losing your loved ones. Harry laughed with a mouthful of rotten teeth. The torture of the family genetic disease has made him completely crazy. He hated himself, his father, Peter Parker, this world, and all the beautiful things. Let's destroy it together. Harry, stop. The battle between Spider-Man and the Green Goblin became more and more brutal, and the rapidly falling Lizard Parker was about to catch up with Charlotte. He stared at the figure in front of him with a pair of greedy eyes and slowly stretched out his claws. Just a little bit to tear this guy apart. The sharp gears occasionally scratched Charlotte's battlesuit, and the smell of blood quickly overwhelmed Lizard Parker's reason. Peter. Suddenly, Gwen's cry was like a spring of clear water pouring into the desert in Lizard Parker's heart, quickly extinguishing his rage and bloodthirstiness. Gwen. The pupils in his eyes shrank slightly, and he stared at Gwen in Charlotte's arms, her face full of panic and worry. He had never seen Gwen so helpless. In his heart, Gwen was Spider-Man, a hero, who could calmly solve any problem. She could protect everyone, and defeat all powerful enemies. But Lizard Parker came to his senses, and his hideous face gradually eased. Although he knew that the Peter that Gwen was worried about was not him, he still made a choice. You are not her, he murmured, as if saying goodbye. In his eyes, Gwen's face gradually blurred, but he saw it clearly. She was Gwen, not Spider-Man. Fake, you win. The next moment, a heart-wrenching roar resounded through the bell tower. Lizard Parker pushed away Charlotte and Gwen, who were close at hand, and then was hit by the huge gear falling from the top of his head. Boom! As the giant gear smashed into the ruins, Lizard Parker's figure disappeared completely. In the dust, Charlotte flew to the ground with Spider Silk. Gwen looked at the ruins in front of her with lingering fear, and her expression was inexplicably melancholy. He saved us. Charlotte exhaled. Yes, he will definitely save you, he said very confidently. Many restarts made him sure that Lizard Parker really hoped that Gwen could survive, and it had nothing to do with the resurrection match. However, this strange voice made Gwen instantly realize that something was wrong. Chapter 6, Totem Power, Nanosuit. Peter, you. No, you are not Peter. Gwen's face changed, and she stepped back slightly. Charlotte took off her hood and revealed a young face. I'm Charlotte, Charlotte Parker, a very practical Spider-Man. I have encountered a troublesome matter recently, so you can see me. Oh, please put away your surprised expression. By the way, what did you eat for dinner? I smell a faint smell of beef pizza on you. That thing is my favorite, but you know that Spider-Man has no pockets, so I didn't bring any money. You can consider treating me. Wait, Mr. Spider-Man, my head hurts a little. Can you tell me why you saved me? Gwen put her hand on her forehead. She was now worried about 3 times. Hearing this, Charlotte raised her hand to wipe the blood on her forehead with an inexplicable stubbornness in her eyes. He said seriously, for myself, and to break Spider-Man's lonely fate. Lonely fate. Gwen thought of Peter's deceased relatives and Harry, who had turned against him, and immediately understood. Spider-Man is lonely. This is fate, more like a curse. At this time, the flames of the armor roared, and Charlotte knew that he had to leave. Gwen, it's time to say goodbye. Remember to treat me to pizza later. As he said that, his figure was swallowed by the void in an instant. He took advantage of Tony this time. Although the other party did not take this resurrection match seriously, this guy is sometimes very stingy. Who knows, he might give him a blow at the last moment. He has to leave quickly. Soon, the armor landed, and Tony's nano helmet converged, revealing a resentful face. Where is that guy? He asked Gwen. Gwen was stunned. He disappeared in a blink of an eye. Tony rubbed his eyebrows. Okay, I should have been fooled. You did not win this resurrection match, and are about to leave this world. Please continue to work hard next time. Looking at the prompt message floating in front of him, Tony couldn't help laughing. There will be a next time. He thought it was a prank of the Infinity Stones. In Gwen's shocked eyes, Tony's figure disappeared. However, the battle between Spider-Man and the Green Goblin continued. In Charlotte's universe, the Empire State Building, the antenna tower, who the wind was fierce in the dark night, and the red and blue battlesuits floated in the night sky, and the flying ashes gathered in the wind. Under the moonlight, the shriveled battlesuit quickly became full. Charlotte opened his eyes again, and found himself under the antenna tower before death. The prompt message that appeared in front of him made him smile. You have successfully won this resurrection match. Received reward 1, resurrection quota X1, used, received reward 2, strength plus 10 tons, first time winning the resurrection match, additional reward, nano spider battlesuit, battle damage version, first time winning the resurrection match, additional reward, spider totem power X1, number of restarts remaining. 1, retained until the next resurrection match. He clenched his fists, and could clearly feel the explosive power all over his body. After 8 restarts, the basic strength increased from 1 ton to nearly 2 tons. With the rewards from the resurrection match, his current strength is 12 tons. 12 tons of strength is not outstanding among Spider-Man, and is even at the bottom, but it will be of great help to him in dealing with the next predicament. As his strength increases, his physical fitness will also increase. Let's look at the extra rewards this time. Nano Spider Suit, War Damaged version, a nano metal suit with missing functions, only retaining basic artificial intelligence assistance, Spider Silk Glider, constant temperature system, urine filtration system, and suit oxygen supply system, Spider Totem Power, Spider-Man's most essential source of power, the ultimate judgment of fate, with mysterious power. Please develop it yourself. The mysterious power disappeared after it flowed into the body, as if it had never appeared, and Charlotte had a question mark on his face. Totem power, this thing seems to have appeared in Spider-Man comics, but he really doesn't know what it does. As for the nanosuit, he thought, and a palm-sized Spider-Man logo appeared in the palm of his hand. He slapped the spider logo on his chest, and in an instant the nanometal quickly covered his body, isolating him from the high-altitude cold wind, while the nanometal fit his body tightly. Sliding down the curtain wall of the building with the help of spider silk, the glass reflected the gorgeous figure of Spider-Man. Rather than calling it a battlesuit, it is actually more like a battle armor. Under the moonlight, the metal texture of the nanosuit reflects a trace of cold light. The overall shape is embellished with golden lines, and the eyes are glowing with a faint blue light, which is very eye-catching in the night. Charlotte moved his hands and feet, and was very satisfied with the cool suit. It's a pity that it is only a battle-damaged version, without the metal spider spear and spider silk device, not to mention the red eye one-hit kill mode. And the basic artificial intelligence assistance is not comparable to Jarvis. Just to make it easier to control this nanosuit, at least it will not delay his ability to shoot spider silk with his wrist, or be blocked by nanometal when climbing the wall. Everything is adaptive. This is a nano suit specially made for Spider-Man. After sorting out the harvest this time, Charlotte jumped down from the curtain wall. The wind whistled in the sky, and as he opened his arms, a spider silk glider as thin as a cicada's wing suddenly extended from his armpits. In an instant, Charlotte's falling speed slowed down. With the help of the hang glider, he flew over several tall buildings in succession, and then plunged into the neon lights of the street. The bustling city with heavy traffic was still the New York of the past. Oh, what is that? Spider-Man? Oh my god, he's not dead. There's something wrong with his suit. It's made of metal. His suit has been upgraded. Incredible. Passersby exclaimed, and Charlotte was used to it. Although he had only been Spider-Man for a short time, his actions were not low-key, and the public was very concerned about Spider-Man with superpowers, and countless citizens knew him. But what made Charlotte strange was that, except Norman, no one knew about his death. How did these people know? Until he returned to Queens 117A Blake Street. Outside the window, a red and blue figure slowly climbed up the wall. In the room, Ben Parker and Aunt May were snuggling together, watching the entertainment programs on the TV, and laughing from time to time. Charlotte poked his head out, and his light blue eyes shrank slightly. The couple is living a pretty good life. He breathed a sigh of relief. Suddenly, the show ended, and Ben Parker pressed the remote control with a look of reluctance. On the TV, the host in a neat suit smiled. Hi, viewers, this is Global News. Regarding the news of Spider-Man's death, we are fortunate to have invited an expert who specializes in Spider-Man. He will provide us with some relevant information. He handed the microphone to the expert next to him. Hello everyone, I'm Jonah Jameson from the Daily Bugle. According to the information provided by the Green Goblin, we can basically confirm that Spider-Man has been killed. He hasn't appeared for a week. Chapter 7 Spider-Man's Provocation. On the TV screen, a middle-aged man with a mustache was holding a cigar and laughing at the camera without disguising himself. He seemed to find the scene a little awkward, so he quickly restrained his smile, straightened his collar and spoke again. Spider-Man is a pest. He is a coward who dares not show his face, but the same is true for the Green Demon wearing a mask. The difference is that the Green Demon is more arrogant than Spider-Man. He has attacked Osborn Group, Hammer Technology and Stark Building in succession in the past few days, and claimed that he killed Spider-Man. During this period, Spider-Man did not show up, proving that what he said is likely to be true. Seeing this, the host asked at the right time, "Excuse me, Mr. Jonah, could Spider-Man be kidnapped or injured, so he has not shown up in the past few days?" Jonah Jameson grinned. Impossible. He must be dead. Why are you so sure? This is my sixth sense. Host. Why didn't this guy follow the script? It was terrible. Charlotte. Looking at Jonah Jameson, who was smug on the screen, he complained in his heart. This guy is worthy of being Spider-Man's lifelong enemy. If I remember correctly, he doesn't know him at all. Is it necessary to be so happy that Spider-Man is dead? He looked at the time. After 8 resurrection matches, 8 days have passed in the real world. The speed of time can be basically determined. Ben Parker and Aunt May didn't seem to be worried about him after he disappeared for so long. Something is wrong. Is it because the show is too funny? Charlotte scratched his head. But soon, he knew the reason. Ben, our little Charlotte shared his vacation life with us again. He met a very beautiful girl in Bali. He needs courage. Aunt May picked up the phone and shared Charlotte's vacation life with Ben Parker with relish. Ben Parker took a look and couldn't help wondering, will there be girls who like him as a chatterbox? Aunt May glared at Ben Parker. Old man, even a Doyle bottle like you has people who like you, not to mention our little Charlotte. He is very good. Yes, very good. His nonsense has driven several classmates crazy. Ben Parker said this, but there was still a kind smile on his face. It's time to fall in love. He glanced at the TV and changed the subject. Spider-Man is dead, and I don't know if it's true. Don't listen to this guy's nonsense. Jonah is famous for hating Spider-Man. Well, I hope he's still alive. Little Charlotte likes this cute bug very much. His posters are all over the house. The two chatted, and Charlotte lay on the roof with his hands behind his head. The night sky was dotted with stars, and his heart gradually calmed down. Norman already knew his identity, and maybe he would find out that he was still alive soon. In this way, this guy would threaten him with his family. This matter must be resolved as soon as possible. Target, Osborne Group. Immediately, Charlotte stood up, and his hands shot spider silk and landed on the treetops. Catapult. Swoosh, the red and blue figure in the night sky rushed towards the city, and the sin and filth in the darkness gradually emerged. Bonfires were lit in the chaotic city, and the group of bad boys gathered here noticed the figure passing overhead. Wow, it's Spider-Man. The crowd suddenly became excited. The gangster in the lead changed his face and cursed at his younger brother. We are bad guys. Do you really want to meet Spider-Man? Sorry, I'm just a little excited. Shut up. Do you want to lure him over here? Boss, your voice is louder than ours. I know. How did that guy know we were here? Isn't he dead? You believe in global news too? Get out of here with your stuff. Quick. Instantly, everyone started to riot, which instantly caught Charlotte's attention. Hey, have you heard about Spider-Man, too? Charlotte flipped over and landed on the wall. He used his hands to shoot spider silk to drag the leading thug to his feet and snatched his handbag. Wow, it smells like money. Charlotte opened the bag and took a look. If he guessed correctly, there was an extremely dangerous chemical poison in it. Very valuable. Seeing this, the gang leader turned pale and cursed. You damn bug, give me my things back, or I will twist your head off and put it in the oil pan. I know, the protein is 6 times that of beef. Charlotte hung her handbag on the wall and used spider silk as a skipping rope to stretch her muscles. As expected, the next one was a righteous duel. What are you looking at? Come on. The gang leader shouted to his men, and more than 10 people reacted immediately. Go. He's only one person. The man was hit on the head by a brick in the middle of his words, and fell to the ground wailing. Looking at Charlotte again, he saw him throwing the brick, and flying to the ground, running towards the crowd in a dignified manner. Quick, hurry up. Bang bang. Dang ding ding, everyone hurriedly took out their pistols and fired at full power, but saw the nano battlesuit sparks flying and bullet shells scattered all over the ground, which could not stop Charlotte from doing anything. The nano metal defense is good, and the 12 tons of power is enough for Charlotte to ignore the impact of these bullets. Immediately, Charlotte moved through the crowd at a brisk pace, dragging their bodies upside down under the street lights. The dense spider silk cocoons made people's scalps numb. Simple, rough, and direct. There was no skill at all. Ah. Damn bugs, damn Spider-Man. Please let us go. The gangsters begged for mercy and cursed at each other. Charlotte scratched his ears and called the police with the gangster's mobile phone. Before the resurrection match, his speed and strength would not be so exaggerated. It would take a long time to deal with these ordinary gangsters. Goo goo. At this time, an awkward sound came from his stomach, and Charlotte was helpless. Too much spider silk was used, and more energy was needed to synthesize spider silk protein in the body. The next moment, the system prompt appeared in front of him. You play the role of a friendly neighbor to punish evil, and the chance of restarting +1. Seeing this, Charlotte grinned. The 9 restart opportunities in the first resurrection match were all accumulated by his hard work during this period. Then, he began to plunder the gangsters' ill-gotten gains. This is a very important source of income for him. Friends who have been Spider-Man know that Spider-Man is very poor. He is no exception. Not long after, the sound of police sirens came from far away. Swoosh, a red and blue figure flew over their heads, and the police officers looked up. George, it's Spider-Man. He's not dead. I saw it. George narrowed his eyes slightly, then glanced at the stolen goods found by his subordinates, without any joy on his face. Spider-Man, I will definitely catch you with my own hands. He snorted coldly, and then said to the police officers, take them to the car. Yes. The police officers got busy, and they couldn't help whispering to each other while taking action. I feel that George has a lot of hostility towards Spider-Man. Your feeling is right. He doesn't like Spider-Man. Why? Spider-Man has helped us solve a lot of problems so far. Maybe George thinks Spider-Man's behavior is a provocation. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel. Mundo fanfic novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 8, The Green Goblin's Final Madness. Late at night, Osborn Group. Hahaha, so interesting. Fun in the dimly lit office. Norman, wearing the Green Goblin armor, lay on the sofa, dancing like a naughty boy. He accidentally fell off the sofa and his phone fell on the carpet. Oh, my little darling, don't break it, otherwise I will be very sad. Norman carefully checked the phone and then breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately it's not broken, my fun can continue for a while. In the darkness, the timid figure trembled. Mr. Green Goblin, I'm ready. Betty, with a pale face, set up the camera and the office lights were bright. In the corner of the room, there were Osborn shareholders who were tied up. Norman glanced at Betty, and the devil mask on his face was twisted. Don't be afraid, I'm the most terrible devil, and I have no interest in hurting beautiful ladies. Betty was about to cry, and she was even more scared when he said that. Ignoring Betty's fear, Norman stood up and looked down at the shareholders, making a creepy devilish laugh. Ha ha ha, are you ready? The shareholders were terrified and struggling. Norman asked Betty to point the camera at them without saying anything. At the same time, the big screen in Times Square flickered for a moment and was replaced by the live broadcast of the office. Tell me, what did you do to the great Mr. Norman Osborn? Norman laughed. Hearing this, the shareholders avoided their eyes and dared not look at the camera. The next moment, Norman raised his hand and locked one of them by the throat. Catcher. The body collapsed to the ground powerlessly. Betty covered her mouth in fear and shrank in the corner and dared not make a sound. The shareholders were also frightened by Norman's actions and wet their pants. Ha ha ha, what a group of cowards, but I don't like cleaning. Norman flicked out a sharp blade from his wrist and threatened, pointing at someone at random. Start with you. I'll say. The man trembled, and he knelt on the ground with sweat on his head and spoke. I'm Kurtz, and I own 11% of the shares of Osborn Group. Get to the point. Yes. Osborn is a company founded by Mr. Norman. He gave everything for the company, but we joined forces to force him to leave the company after his experiment failed. We are sinners, we are. Not detailed enough. Next one. Norman interrupted Kurtz and chopped off his head without mercy. Ugh, the head rolled down, and the bloody scene made everyone kneel and vomit. Looking at the unbearable side of these guys, Norman felt very happy. Hahaha, funny, too funny. He clapped his hands and laughed, and continued to let other shareholders narrate his grievances. The live broadcast of the square soon attracted countless citizens to stop. Oh my god, it's the Green Goblin again. What a scary guy. So scary. What on earth does he want to do? What a bad taste. Listen, it turns out that they removed Mr. Norman from the position of chairman. How is this possible? What a terrible power struggle. Everyone whispered, and the sirens on the street sounded one after another, and a large number of police officers rushed to the Osborn Group. Hurry, faster. Today is such a bad day. In the police car, George looked grim. Just after handling a case, a more serious and vicious incident came. If it is not handled properly, it will lead to more serious consequences. He glanced at the live broadcast on the big screen, and his face became even gloomier. With the ability of ordinary police officers, this matter cannot be handled at all. I hope those guys are reliable enough. He prayed in his heart. Soon, the police car passed through the square. The red and blue figure flew down and landed steadily on the billboard on the roadside. Looking at the picture on the big screen, Charlotte narrowed his eyes slightly. This guy's illness is getting worse and worse. Otherwise he would not do such a crazy thing. He understood Norman's grievances. He dedicated his whole life to the Osborn Group and lost time to accompany his children and wife. He even didn't see his wife again before she died. Norman owed his family a debt. Just to restore the glory of the Osborn family, he wanted to cure the genetic disease of the Osborn family, for himself, and for Harry, to not be tortured by the family's genetic disease, live longer and be happier. But the failure of the gene serum experiment made him lose everything. All his efforts came to nothing. The shareholders became the last straw that broke the camel's back. They squeezed Norman's last surplus value and abandoned him, causing Norman to take the risk of injecting semi-finished gene serum. Norman succeeded. He had powerful power, and the family's genetic disease could no longer take his life. But he also failed. He lost himself and became crazy and irritable. He wanted to retaliate against everyone and vent his inner pain and grievances. He released the most terrible demon in his heart and brought fear to everyone. In the picture, as the shareholders told the facts one by one, Norman smiled happily. Because of the Osborne Group, he was squeezed by these shareholders for his whole life. He was willing, because this was his favorite career. The reporters who were gathering were doing the same thing. Soon, a large number of police cars were parked under the Osborne building, and a large number of people gathered. Norman did not hide the location of the live broadcast. "Mr. Devil, please calm down. You can tell us your needs and we will try our best to meet them." George raised the horn and shouted beside the police car. The armed personnel quietly sneaked into the building and were on standby at all times. A helicopter was hovering above the building. "Captain, it is basically certain that the identity of the Green Goblin is Norman Osborn." In the cabin, Natasha said with a serious face. Steve on the side held the shield tightly and took a deep breath. "Although I have been frozen for 70 years, my body has fully recovered. It's okay." Natasha shook her head. Norman was once a senior agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., but for some reason, he left S.H.I.E.L.D. very early to run his own company. He is not easy to deal with. Steve frowned. "Why didn't you tell me in advance if there was such a thing? I just learned about it from Nick." "Okay, I have to get used to your unreliability," Steve said, and Clint Barton's voice came from the headset. "I'm ready. As long as he appears in my sight, I can lock him in the first time." "Very good, Barton. You are Hawkeye, right? I look forward to working with you." On the top of the tall building, Barton held a composite bow and locked onto Norman's office with a serious expression. Suddenly, a red and blue figure appeared in his sight, and he quietly put on the arrow and locked onto the figure. "I found a red and blue bug. Do you want to shoot him down?" he asked. "Bug?" Steve was stunned, while Natasha was thoughtful. "It's Spider-Man. It seems Norman didn't kill him." Chapter 9 Captain, times have changed. Don't do it. It will alert Norman. Nick Fury's voice came from the headset. "Understood." Barton silently observed the scene. Steve and Natasha also jumped from the helicopter and began to lurk towards Norman's office. At the same time, Charlotte also flew into the building using the spider silk. The building was pitch black, with only the clock on the wall ticking. Charlotte climbed on the ceiling of the corridor without making a sound. But the armed personnel who sneaked into the building were not so cautious. Click as the trap in the stairwell was triggered. There was a loud bang. The floor shook violently, and the raging fire broke through the wall and raged. The corridor was full of rubble and dust. In the office, Norman heard the movement and stuck his head out of the window. Seeing the police cars gathering downstairs, he laughed at the shareholders. "Ha ha ha, your savior is here. Don't worry, I won't kill you here. I will play this game with you slowly. Look forward to your ending." After saying that, he threw a pumpkin bomb out of the window with his backhand. Boom. Outside the window, before Steve could break in, there was a terrible explosion. He only had time to block the shield in front of him, and then he was blown away by the powerful impact. Fortunately, he grabbed the protruding outer wall at the critical moment, which saved him from the risk of falling from the building. "Ha ha ha, you guys from S.H.I.E.L.D., you are still far away." The arrogant Norman flew out of the window on his skateboard, and the next moment he was hit on the head by the shield and rolled straight down the corridor downstairs. "Shit, what the hell is this?" Norman shook his dizzy head. Steve, who had recovered, turned over and broke in through the window, and the shield flew back and fell into his palm. "Mr. Devil, you are the brat in my eyes, the rude brat." Steve took a deep breath and ran up. The moment Norman stood up, he flew over and punched the opponent's demon mask. Boom, then the wind whistled, and fists and shields attacked in turn. The airtight attack made Norman's pressure increase suddenly. The next second, with Steve's hug and throw, Norman's head sank deep into the floor, which seemed to indicate the end of the fight. Looking at Norman, who stopped struggling, Steve took a breath and tapped the headset. Done. He was very confident in his fighting skills. Beep beep beep. At some point, the flying skateboard floated outside the window, and the dangerous red light was flashing. Steve, who noticed something was wrong, immediately raised his shield. Wait, I don't think I got it. Boom. With a loud bang, Steve was swept away by the explosion. The wall collapsed, and the rubble flew. Norman stood up and twisted his neck, and the demon mask was even more terrifying. Ha ha ha, the military fighting skills from decades ago are outdated. This is the fashion now. Norman's eyes flashed with cruelty, and several pumpkin bombs poured into the ruins. Boom. The outer wall of the building burst into flames, and the embarrassed figure huddled up, relying on the shield's super strong cushioning to fall from dozens of meters in the air, and directly hit the roof of the car. Bang. The fire suddenly appeared, and the car on the side of the road turned into a pile of scrap metal in an instant. Amid the dense alarms, Steve slowly got up from the roof of the car, bared his teeth, and picked up the shield. The world is changing so fast. He looked at the floor covered by flames and gasped. Seeing this, the onlookers at the scene expressed their disbelief. Oh my god, did this soldier fall from above? He's not dead. His uniform is very nice. It's tight. Barton observed the building. You shouldn't have kicked him back into the building. I can't lock onto him. No, I locked onto him. No, it's not Norman. I saw Spider-Man. Boom. As the rubble continued to fall from the upper floors of the building, Norman was surprised to find that his flying skateboard had been destroyed at some point, and he could not contact his flying machine, and at the same time he found the remaining spider silk. What? This spider silk is Spider-Man. He was horrified at first, and then laughed. Ha ha ha, you're not dead. That's great. No, why are you not dead? This doesn't make sense. I clearly saw. Halfway through his words, he suddenly threw a pumpkin bomb behind him. Demons are scary and cunning. You're still using this trick? On the ceiling, Charlotte, who was about to take action, raised his hand to shoot spider silk, wrapped in the pumpkin bomb, and threw it to the next door. Boom. Immediately, screams came from the room, and the bloody shareholders were drowned by the collapsed walls. You players are friendly neighbor punishing criminals. Restart chance +1. Charlotte was a little slow to react when the prompt message appeared in front of him. The villain turned out to be a hapless guy. Norman, who didn't understand, clapped his hands and said, "It's you, Charlotte. Congratulations on your new suit. But you killed someone. Are you still a city hero?" His tone was full of sarcasm. In response, Charlotte shrugged and said indifferently, "So you think I'm a hero, Uncle Norman? I may have to sue you for defamation." After speaking, he fired spider silk with both hands, and his body burst out in the spider silk slingshot. If it were him before, he would only have a pitiful 1 ton of strength, and it would be impossible for him to fight the Green Goblin in close combat. Norman didn't have time to throw the pumpkin bomb, and his body was smashed into the wall under the impact like a cannonball, and the whole person was completely exposed outside the building. Lock on him. Barton on the roof narrowed his eyes and shot an arrow without hesitation. Yin. The alloy arrow hit Norman's chest, and then the arrowhead exploded. Boom. The explosion and fire swept the street, and Norman's figure fell diagonally. Passers-by screamed and fled. George led the police officers to quickly surround Norman. On the other side, Charlotte was hanging under the billboard with a spider silk in his hand. He looked towards the roof with lingering fear. He was almost injured by mistake. Hawkeye? Very good. I will blow your dog eyes out next time. Looking at Norman, who was fleeing in the car at this time, Charlotte jumped and shot the spider silk into the nearby alley. Norman fell into the hands of S.H.I.E.L.D., and he was also at risk of exposing his identity. I don't know what the situation of S.H.I.E.L.D. in this world is, and it is very likely to be S.H.I.E.L.D. It is also a big trouble for Hydra to know his identity. Norman must be snatched away. While thinking, Charlotte shuttled through high-rise buildings to avoid Hawkeye's sight. This guy's arrows are very dangerous. Soon, the sirens on the street came one after another, and the city was staged with speed and passion. Ha ha ha, go, go. Norman drove the car recklessly, and the police car behind him chased closely. Da-da-da over the city, helicopters flew over the streets, and Hawkeye shot arrows accurately hitting the high-speed cars. Boom. The arrow exploded, and Norman was blown away by the heat wave. Ga-ga-ga, the agents nowadays are pretty good. Norman rolled to the ground, ignoring the attack of bullets. As the wrist device flashed, a brand new flying skateboard flew in the night sky. Goodbye, interesting little guy. Norman jumped on the skateboard and escaped into the residential area. Seeing this, Barton did not hesitate to change the arrows. Wait, there are too many people. Natasha stopped him. Barton frowned. You should believe me. Natasha comforted him. Listen, I believe you, but Norman will also vent his anger on ordinary people nearby. Okay, I understand. Barton finally put down the bow and arrow. Steve on the side stared at Spider-Man, who also rushed into the residential building and then took out a bill from his pocket. $10. I bet he can catch up with Mr. Devil. Barton. Natasha. Chapter 10. The Kid from Queens. Ha ha ha, Kit, you're pretty good, even tougher than before. At this time, Norman pedaled the flying machine to shuttle flexibly through the residential buildings. He turned his head to see the red and blue figures chasing him closely behind him. He glanced at the helicopter above his head and laughed arrogantly. Fun, really fun. He controlled the flying machine to dive into the narrow alley, violently knocking open the clothes drying poles between the balconies along the way. Large pieces of undried clothes flew up and kept rushing towards Charlotte behind him. Sorry, I don't lack the raw materials for the battle suit now. Charlotte flew to the top of the building with the help of Spider Silk, opened his arms wide, and stretched out the glider under his armpits to help him cross the messy alley. Ha ha ha, I got you. The next moment, the figure of the Green Goblin suddenly swooped out of the alley, and the sharp blade ejected from the flying machine was close to Charlotte's heart. The moonlight was cold and the wind was whistling. Charlotte's spider sense did not react at all, but this did not mean that he was not on guard against Norman. Boom, the glider wings extended half an inch, and Charlotte's gliding speed dropped sharply. The Green Goblin miscalculated, and he passed by Charlotte in an instant, rolling up a violent heat wave. Then, Barton on the helicopter saw the Green Goblin take off and shot an arrow without hesitation. Boom. With a loud bang, raging flames suddenly appeared in the air, and Norman had to escape into the residential building again to avoid Hawkeye's lock. Newcomers nowadays are so rude. Norman sighed, and the next moment he felt the aircraft under his feet lose control. No, shit. He tried his best to stabilize the aircraft, and looked down to find that the aircraft was entangled by spider silk at some point. Norman looked back and saw that, while Charlotte was holding the spider silk with one hand to drag the aircraft, the other hand continuously shot spider silk to his face. Oh, damn guy. Boom, with his vision blocked, Norman accidentally crashed into the water tank on the roof, and the connection between the armor and the aircraft was disconnected, and his body was thrown down the alley. No, no, no. Bang, bang, bang. After falling into the alley, Norman broke the clothes drying pole one after another, and finally crashed into a trash can full of rotten smell. No, it's disgusting. The trash can burst, and as soon as Norman stood up, he was kicked away by Charlotte, who flew down. Bang. With all his strength, the green armor smashed into the wall, and the surrounding residents were awakened by the noise and stuck their heads out one after another. Oh, it's Spider-Man. And the Green Devil. Oh my god, our clothes. Exclamations came one after another, and Norman rushed out of the hole in the wall angrily. I'm the most terrible demon. No one can defeat me. Puff puff puff. The next moment, Charlotte quickly fired spider silk to form a trap, and Norman crashed into the spider web and struggled hard. Tell me, why are you still alive? As if he was tired, Norman gasped, staring at Charlotte with evil eyes. Charlotte shrugged. Sorry, you didn't kill me at all. It was all your hallucination. He pointed to his head, indicating that there was something wrong with Norman's brain. What? Norman's pupils trembled, then shook his head and screamed, impossible, I'm not sick, I'm not sick. Charlotte glanced at the figure of the helicopter jumping down from his head, and there was no time for Norman to vent. He was about to go forward and take Norman away, and the unreliable spider sense suddenly warned his heart. This is. In an instant, Charlotte's eyes flashed blue, and he fired spider silk away from Norman without hesitation. Boom. White light flashed, and a strong light burst out in the alley, and the spider silk trap melted instantly. Charlotte flew close to the wall, and said with lingering fear, is this a real pumpkin bomb? He was crushed to pieces by this kind of bomb last time. The trapped Norman slowly walked out of the dark corner, his eyes becoming more and more evil. Not bad, much more vigilant than last time. He praised. If this kind of bomb was not difficult to make, and he didn't have many in his hands, otherwise the group of SHIELD agents would have been crushed to pieces. Charlotte half crouched on the wall and did not act rashly for a while. After some testing, although the opponent's strength was not very strong, less than 10 tons, the flying machine and the terrifying pumpkin bomb that could be called at any time were a great threat. Moreover, whether Norman was hit by Hawker's arrow or continuous strong impact, he could recover quickly, and the Green Goblin armor was not damaged too much. Black technology weapons plus excellent physical fitness, plus cunning personality. It is difficult to defeat this guy without absolute strength suppression. Hey, do you need help? At this time, Steve, holding a shield, jumped down from the stairwell and blocked Norman's way. You are Spider-Man. Where are you from? Steve raised his shield and asked Charlotte. Charlotte flew to the ground. Oh, Queens. How about you? SHIELD. Number 1 staff dormitory, 1 kitchen, 1 bathroom, and independent beds. Steve looked proud. In his time, this was the treatment only for superiors. I think you can talk later. Natasha on the roof pointed a gun at Norman. On the other side, Barton bent his bow and drew his arrow. My house is a 2-story villa with 5 bedrooms and 2 living rooms. Charlotte scratched her head. I hate this kind of comparison. Norman looked around the scene, and the devil mask on his face became more and more creepy. Have you poor guys ever lived in a castle? No, but if we catch you, we can sell your castle to compensate for the loss this time. After Steve finished speaking, he swung the shield in his hand. At the same time, arrows came at him with a faint hum, but the cunning Norman was not to be outdone, and directly threw all the pumpkin bombs around. Boom. The terrifying explosion happened again, and the nearby residents screamed and fled. In the surging heat wave, the arrow broke, the shield was inserted diagonally into the ground, and Norman's figure had disappeared. Ahem, in the mess, Steve covered his mouth and nose with one hand, and he went forward to pick up his shield. He ran away. Barton looked around carefully. I didn't see him. Well, this mission failed. Natasha looked helpless. I haven't encountered such a tough opponent for a long time. 3 Avengers are not enough. By the way, where is the little spider in Queens? She looked around and suddenly found that Spider-Man had disappeared. At the same time, the sound of sirens rang through the night sky. In the chaotic streets, Norman wrapped in a bedsheet and followed everyone to evacuate the scene. Ha ha ha, Nick, are these the Avengers you summoned? They are so lame, a bunch of idiots. Norman was proud in his heart. He hunched his figure and mixed in the crowd. He took a few steps and dodged into the narrow alley nearby. Ha ha ha, fun. So fun in the alley. Norman took off his helmet, danced and walked in the deserted alley, kicking down the trash can at his feet from time to time, very proud. However, he soon paused, looking at the red and blue figure on the huge spider web in front of him, and his smile gradually faded. Charlotte, smart boy, I love you to death. He grinned. Charlotte sat cross-legged on the spider web. Don't mention the word death to me, I'm allergic. After saying that, he pulled off the spider silk beside him with one hand, and Norman was instantly covered by the spider silk trap falling from above his head. Chapter 11, The Dangerous Marvel World. Your pumpkin bombs are all used up, and I think I can do it again. Charlotte pulled the spider silk, and Norman, who was wrapped in a giant cocoon, rolled continuously, and the arm device ejected dense green goblin darts. Puff puff puff. In an instant, the spider silk was cut off, and the huge spider web was cut back and forth by the constantly rotating darts, covering the narrow alley and the sharp edge. Ha ha ha, Kit, you underestimate the cunning demon. Norman stood up and clicked the arm device, remotely controlling these darts to lock Charlotte's figure. Puff puff. Immediately, the sharp light cut off the spider silk in Charlotte's hand one after another, making it impossible for him to move flexibly through the spider silk. In an instant, dense darts crossed Charlotte's nano battlesuit. Sparks burst out, but failed to break through the defense of the nano battlesuit. This made Charlotte breathe a sigh of relief. Then, blue light flashed in his eyes, and with the help of artificial intelligence, he locked all the darts around him. His muscles were tensed, and his fists were hitting continuously without any effort. The flashing darts turned into scrap metal and fell to his feet one after another. What? Norman was startled. Before he could make any move, he saw a red and blue figure approaching with the help of spider silk. Wait, I'm not ready yet. Bang. Charlotte threw a standard right hook, and the wind was whistling. Under the impact of more than 10 tons of punch force, Norman screamed and crashed into the wall. Bang. With a loud bang, the rubble slid down. The dizzy Norman just pulled his head out of the hole in the wall, and the next second, Charlotte grabbed his head and hit it against the wall continuously. Bang bang bang. No, stop, I'm dizzy, Norman wailed in a muffled sound. Without the assistance of black technology, he was slightly inferior in strength. If it weren't for the protection of the helmet, his head would have been cracked. Really? Then I'll take care of the old man's mood. Charlotte grinned, raised his hand to slap Norman's helmet, grabbed a handful of broken lime, and applied it to his face. I'm going to sprinkle some dust in your eyes. Damn it, stop it, I'm the most terrible demon, you can't do this to me. 3 minutes later, Norman, whose face was covered with blood from the broken stones, leaned against the wall with a look of despair. How could this happen? After suffering inhuman torture, Norman's eyes were filled with confusion. It hurts. You are. Charlotte, what did I just do? He looked at Charlotte in front of him, and suddenly woke up. Child, I'm sorry, really? I'm sorry, that's not me. I don't want to be this kind of monster. I just want to cooperate with you, and I don't really want to kill your family, you believe me? Norman cried with his head in his hands. Obviously, he didn't forget the fact that he threatened Charlotte with his family. Charlotte patted the dust on his hands. I'm sorry too. It's hard to forgive you for this. Is there any way to suppress your illness? He asked. Norman lowered his head and said with tears in his eyes, there is no way. I can't do it. I have done too many wrong things and I can't turn back. So, Kit, if you want to stop me, you can only go to hell. The moment Norman roared fiercely, Charlotte's spider sense was restored, and a chill rose up his back. The danger did not come from Norman in front of him, but from behind. Norman has an accomplice? What are you waiting for? Kill him. Norman's wrist flicked out a sharp blade to attack, and Charlotte jumped and turned to avoid the sharp edge of the blade by a millimeter, and swept over Norman's head and fell behind him. The smooth movement was simply impeccable. Friends who have been Spider-Man know that the action of spinning comes from Spider-Man's instinctive reaction and does not require any practice. Puff. The next moment, a sudden change occurred, and warm blood splashed on Charlotte's face, blurring his eyes. In front of him, he saw the steel claws with cold light cruelly breaking through Norman's back armor, and the bloody flesh hole was shocking. What? Charlotte looked horrified, and he subconsciously took a step back. He avoided Norman's sneak attack, but Norman was also mistakenly killed by the so-called accomplice. Very ironic. Boom. In an instant, thunder flashed in the night sky, and drizzle drifted into the alley. The mysterious man slowly pulled the claws out of the flesh, and the gushing blood mixed with rain flowed all over the ground. Norman slowly turned around, and blood gushed out of his mouth. The madness in his eyes quickly subsided, and he seemed to be very satisfied with this way of relief. He smiled, and there was reluctance in his smile, and then it turned into panic and uneasiness. Child, don't tell Harry, and don't be Spider-Man anymore. Go. In a hoarse roar, Norman threw the things in his hand to Charlotte, and then resolutely turned and pounced on the shadow in the dark. Tear with the sound of the armor being torn, the blood dyed the alley red. The rain poured down, and the dark shadows in the rainy night were like beasts in the flood, choosing people to devour. You defeated the supervillain, and the chance to restart +9. Hooah the rain kept sliding down from the nanosuit, and Charlotte shot Spider Silk to quickly shuttle through the high-rise buildings, and his heartbeat accelerated. He was not afraid of death, but the spider sense magnified his fear of death, making him instinctively stay away from the scene, not daring to stay for a moment. Who killed Norman? The spider sense had such a strong reaction to that guy, which meant that the other party was very dangerous, and he was no match for him at all. Norman seemed to know who this person was, and reminded him not to get involved. So this was not an accident. Thinking of this, Charlotte's scalp tingled. The Marvel world seemed to be more terrible than he imagined, so terrible that he couldn't guess who the real enemy was. After a moment of thinking, he felt exhausted, and his wrist could no longer shoot Spider Silk. Oops. Feeling weightless, Charlotte was stunned at high altitude, as if he had anticipated his fate. The spider silk consumed too much, and his body could not continue to synthesize spider silk protein, and his strength was greatly weakened. As expected, after a freefall, Charlotte crashed into the balcony of the tall building beside him. Fuck, who would keep a python on the balcony? He cursed. The owner of the balcony heard the noise. He opened the door and window, and looked at Charlotte with surprise, who was entangled by the golden python. Oh, it's Spider-Man. Yes, it's me, your good neighbor Spider-Man. Charlotte said. He locked the python's head with one hand, carefully pulled off the python hanging on his body, and then noticed the pizza in the man's hand. Hey, Jack, is this your dinner? He threw the python away, greeted him skillfully, and then took the pizza from the other person without leaving any trace. The nanomortal squirmed to reveal the lower half of his face, and Charlotte stuffed the pizza into his mouth. No, I'm not Jack, my name is. The man wanted to explain. Okay, Jack, have a good night. Charlotte took all the pizzas, and walked towards the door. Yeah, it's really good, beef. Wait, that's the bathroom. The door is on the left. The man reminded with a confused look on his face. Thank you, Jack. Say hello to Ruth for me. Charlotte had just left when the woman walked out of the bedroom and said with a bad look in her eyes, "Who is Ruth?" The man shrugged. "I don't know. Jason, you've been exposed." Wait, let me explain. In the corridor, Charlotte heard a quarrel coming from the room and immediately scratched her head. Strange, would someone quarrel because there is Spider-Man hiding in the house? Chapter 12 Spider-Man's Social Death. Shrugging his shoulders, he ate the rest of the pizza in big mouthfuls and felt much better. But synthesizing spider silk protein requires not only energy, but also time. Beep, the elevator door opened, and under the strange gaze of the man, Charlotte stepped into the elevator. Silence. Ahem, my name is O'Neill, and I study fashion design. The man in a suit beside him coughed to break the silence, and then handed Charlotte a business card. Charlotte touched his body. "Oh, sorry, I don't have a trouser pocket." O'Neill was a little embarrassed, and his hand holding the business card froze for a few seconds. "It's okay. Your suit is very nice. It seems to be made of metal." "Yes, nanotechnology. Isn't it cool?" "Oh, it's incredible. Do we have this kind of technology now?" "No, it's the reward I got for winning the resurrection match." "Haha, you are very humorous. This is the inherent impression everyone has of me. In fact, I think I'm a very serious Spider-Man. Of course, if you think I have a sense of humor, I will accept it. After all, who can refuse a good neighbor Spider-Man who is humorous and has strong arms? By the way, I can also tell you a joke. Have you seen the Green Godzilla? I just competed with it a while ago." "Okay, Mr. Spider-Man, we are on the first floor." O'Neill took a step back and began to feel a little disgusted. Charlotte paused. "Sorry, I couldn't help it for a moment." He hurried out of the elevator and then tapped the spider logo on his chest. The nanomortal instantly shrank. He went to the street to take a taxi. "Hello, Queens, meet her." It was early morning when Charlotte returned home on Blake Street. Before he could find the key to open the door, the good neighbor next door opened the window to greet him. "Charlotte, you're back." The beautiful girl with long burgundy hair waved and greeted. Charlotte looked up and glanced at the other person's lace pajamas. "Yes, Mary Jane, you got up very early today." "I get up very early every day. By the way, where's my gift?" "Gift? Yes, we had a great time chatting on the phone, so you promised to give me a lipstick." "Charlotte." He touched the phone in his pocket, which he had snatched back from Norman. The last time he died under the antenna tower, Norman took his phone. So, what has Norman done with his phone these days? He had a bad feeling. Sure enough, after perfunctorily telling Mary Jane, he opened the door and returned home, where Ben Parker and Aunt May were having breakfast. "My little Charlotte, why didn't you tell me in advance when you came back? I really missed you." Aunt May stepped forward and pinched Charlotte's cheek with a kind smile. "Little Charlotte, where are our gifts?" "Charlotte." He rubbed his face, forced a smile and said, "The gift is in the suitcase, and it will be sent to my home in 2 days." "Well, I'm looking forward to the scarf you bought for me." Aunt May looked expectant. Ben Parker at the dining table turned around and said to Charlotte seriously, "If you forget our gift, you don't have to go home next time." Charlotte's mouth twitched. Is this the end of the family's feelings? Next, under Aunt May's curiosity, Charlotte made up the so-called travel experience and finally got away with it. Back in the room, he quickly opened his mobile phone to check his chat software, and his expression gradually became interesting. After a while, Charlotte slowly exhaled and resisted the urge to curse. If nothing unexpected happens, he will be dead. Is this the Green Goblin's evil taste? Charlotte sighed, then took out a green key from his pocket. This was something Norman threw to him before he died, and it should be left for Harry. I have to find a chance to give it to him. Thinking of his best friend Harry, Charlotte had a headache again. Fate once again made him the enemy of the Green Goblin. Will Harry also become the Green Goblin? He felt that he should do something. After putting away Norman's key, Charlotte lay on the bed and fell asleep. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, after getting up, Charlotte stood by the window to bask in the sun. Taking a deep breath, he felt relaxed and energetic. Swoosh, he raised his hand and shot spider silk to the bird passing by the window. Very good, it has recovered. Charlotte gently helped the bird to tidy up its feathers and then took a look at the class schedule. There is an experimental class today and I have to go to class. I don't know if Norman has asked for leave for him. Well, this guy shouldn't be so kind. After letting the bird fly, he picked up his backpack and walked towards the door. I'm going to class, don't wait for me to eat tonight. After saying hello, Charlotte rode his bicycle to the city. He wanted to prepare gifts for Aunt May and Uncle Ben. As for Mary Jane, forget it. Money is for women to see, not for women to spend. Fortunately, he got a lot of US dollars from the gangsters last night, and the money is enough to buy some gifts. In the gift shop, Charlotte filled in the delivery address. He looked at the time. There were only 20 minutes left. It was almost too late. Charlotte dodged into the nearby alley, tapped his chest lightly, and a nanometal quickly covered him. He quickly climbed up the high wall, and he spread the glider under his armpits, and flew towards the Imperial University. He had graduated from Midtown Middle School in the first half of the year, and was admitted to the Imperial State University as he wished. In the Marvel world, many superheroes and villains have more or less connections with this school. For example, Dr. Octopus and Dr. Lizard. Swoosh, soon, Charlotte flew into the school forest park. The nanosuit shrank, and he adjusted his casual clothes, and walked out of the bushes. Hey, Charlotte, you have a great figure. Yes, and it's very white. Under the shade of the trees in the park, the senior sisters passing by smiled and looked at Charlotte, and then gathered together to laugh. Charlotte had a dark face, and walked towards the laboratory building without saying a word. He had a few selfies on his phone. That was when he just became Spider-Man, in order to show off his muscular body. Yes, Norman sent the photo to many seniors with his mobile phone. After so many days, it must have spread in the school. So along the way, the unrestrained seniors gave him kisses, while the reserved ones lowered their heads and walked past Charlotte without saying a word, and some even turned around and walked away. It was a scene of social death. The classmates around him looked at Charlotte as if they were watching animals in the zoo, which made him crazy. What made him collapse was still to come. Charlotte, please don't harass me in the future. Ordinary boys like you have no attraction to me. I hope you can see more of the world and make yourself better before coming to me. The excellent senior who never felt inferior rolled her eyes proudly when she saw Charlotte and then turned around and walked away. Charlotte. He clenched his fists and resisted the urge to hit someone. What a sin! Exclamation mark. Hey, Charlotte. At this time, Charlotte heard the voice and turned around, only to see a sunny boy wearing branded clothes running towards him with an extremely strange smile. So you like this type? No wonder you are so cold to Mary Jane. Harry tapped Charlotte's chest with his fist and smiled. Charlotte's mouth twitched, and then pointed at the girl's back, and said to Harry, "Your wife." Harry was immediately furious. Why are you cursing? Your wife. You still curse. I want to duel with you. The two of them rushed into the experimental classroom one after another while playing. As expected, the students present showed strange expressions when they saw Charlotte. Ignoring the discussions of the crowd, Charlotte walked calmly to the experimental table in the corner. As long as I'm not embarrassed, I'm still embarrassed. Chapter 13 Professor Kurt's Regeneration Experiment. Soon, the one-armed middle-aged professor walked into the laboratory. Students, today's experiment is the synthesis and decomposition of biological proteins. Kurt Connors glanced at the classroom casually and immediately locked onto Charlotte in the corner. Because the students present were also looking at him. Charlotte Parker, good, you came to class. To Charlotte's surprise, Kurt Connors did not have any dissatisfaction with him because of his absence from class these days, but praised Charlotte in public with a look of relief. Dear students, Charlotte and I have talked about this topic through the chat software these days. Charlotte's insights into biology are beyond my expectations, and he is very good at mechanical theory. If you have any questions in this regard, you can ask him. Hearing this, everyone's eyes became even more strange. Yes, Professor Kurt, Charlotte is not only excellent, but his self-eyes are also very good. Haha, I heard that he harassed dozens of female students at the same time those female students blocked him. Crazy Charlotte. The class was noisy, and Kurt Connors frowned. Quiet. Without waiting for everyone to speak, he said to Charlotte, come find me after the class. Okay. Charlotte nodded. He could guess that Norman and Connors had talked a lot. Harry on the side came closer and said, don't forget the basketball game tonight. Charlotte covered her face. I can't play basketball. Harry rolled his eyes. I didn't ask you to play the game. You asked me to make an appointment with Gwen, who is level 02. Did you forget? Charlotte. Good guy. The villain is still pushing the plot even after he died. Now, this is called professionalism. Next, Kurt Connors demonstrated the experimental process. Today's biological protein is the spider silk of the Black Widow. We can use various materials to fuse spider silk proteins in a certain proportion so that we can get spider silk with different properties. Although Kurt Connors only has one arm, this simple experiment is not difficult for him, and he doesn't need an assistant at all. Offstage, Charlotte did not use the spider silk of the Black Widow, but squeezed a little of his own spider silk from his wrist as a sample, and then used a relatively high-strength resin material to fuse the spider silk in a 1-to-1 experimental manner. Soon, he got a spider silk sample with lower toughness, but stronger viscosity and extremely difficult to decompose. The spider silk synthesized by Charlotte himself is very sticky and will decompose naturally within 3 hours. Although it is highly tough, it is still not comparable to the spider silk of other Spider-Man. When hungry and weak, the biological protein in his body will stop synthesizing spider silk, which is also a small trouble for him. So he plans to try to synthesize artificial spider silk, so as to avoid falling off the chain at a critical moment. Peter Parker can experiment with practical artificial spider silk in a very short time, a true genius boy. But Charlotte can't. He is also not as good as other Spider-Man in this regard, and it takes a long time to try. The 1-to-1 fusion cannot reach the passing line, so he changes the ratio and continues the experiment. The experimental course ended quickly, and Charlotte's progress did not improve significantly. 10 minutes later, Charlotte followed Professor Kurt to his laboratory. Charlotte, this is a lizard gene experiment I mentioned to you. Kurt Connors pointed to the green lizard in the ecological tank, his eyes full of eagerness. Thanks for your advice. My regeneration gene serum data is more complete, and the Osborn group has funded me. My experiment will soon enter the stage of live experiment. Seeing this, Charlotte frowned. Live experiment? Is it human experiment? Of course not. Professor Kurt smiled and said, this is expressly prohibited. Of course, it is experimented on mice. I hope so. Charlotte had an ominous premonition. In the Marvel universe, Kurt Connors' regeneration serum is almost an impossible experiment. With Kurt Connors' persistence in the regeneration serum, he knew that he could not persuade the other party to give up the experiment. Because of Norman's participation, the progress of this experiment seems to have been advanced. So the day of Dr. Lizard's birth is not far away. Both Norman and Professor Kurt were kind people before they were affected by the gene serum. He failed to stop Norman from becoming the Green Goblin, but Professor Kurt still had time. Charlotte knew that he had no ability to improve the experimental data for Connors, so he could only find an opportunity to delay the progress of the experiment. After a moment of thinking, Professor Kurt talked a lot with Charlotte. But Charlotte is not Norman. He does not have such a deep study of biology. In order not to be exposed, he only occasionally agreed with a few words, thinking about other things in his mind. Half an hour later, Charlotte left the laboratory, and Harry, who was waiting at the door, hurried to meet him. I didn't expect you to be so outstanding. Even Professor Kurt, who is the most difficult to get along with, likes you very much. Why didn't I find that you are a genius before? He hooked his arm around Charlotte's neck and smiled. Charlotte shrugged. If I become friends with you, no matter how outstanding I am, I will be overwhelmed by your money aura. You should know this. Harry grinned. You are right, but you should not regret it. The next second, his face was a little melancholy, but a lot of things have happened in the company recently. Although my father didn't tell me, I have guessed that the company may go bankrupt, and I may not have money in the future. Beep. At this time, Harry's cell phone rang, and his face changed immediately after he answered the call. What a joke, Charlotte, I'm in trouble. You go to the basketball game by yourself. I'm leaving first. Harry hurried to the parking lot. Charlotte behind him did not follow him immediately, but turned to the rooftop, changed into an NO suit and flew down. He understood why Harry was so anxious. Boom. Soon, the sports car roared out of the campus. Half an hour later, in the villa area, Harry rushed straight into his father's room after returning home, and found the cold body on the bed at a glance. The body died miserably, with bloodstains all over the body, and the chest was cruelly hollowed out. The huge blood hole was shocking and very scary. This is... Harry stared at the body on the bed in a daze. He walked slowly to the bedside, as if he had been drained of strength. He suddenly collapsed to the ground, his body shaking constantly. Father. He looked at the butler John, his eyes full of bloodshot. He lost his only relative, and he felt that his world had collapsed. He couldn't help but recall every bit of his time with his father in his mind, and his heart ached. Sadness filled the room, and John said with a heavy face, "Yes, he's dead. A mysterious person told me to go there to collect the body. When I arrived, I found Norman's body," and he pointed to the broken armor in the corner, "and the Green Goblin's armor. Did the Green Goblin kill my father?" Harry shuddered. John shook his head. "No, actually, your father is the Green Goblin." "What?" Ignoring the sadness, Harry's face was full of disbelief. "Impossible. How could my father be the Green Goblin? He wouldn't bomb his own company." Harry's excited roar came from the room. At the same time, Charlotte, who had transformed into Spider-Man, quietly sneaked into the villa, holding the green key, and looking for a possible entrance. He didn't give the key to Harry rashly. If Norman had left behind an imperfect genetic serum, Harry would have ended up miserably. Chapter 14 The Truth About Being Spider-Man. The villa was very big, and because Norman's body could not be seen by others, the butler evacuated everyone. Harry and the butler stayed in the room for a long time, leaving Charlotte with a lot of time. But Charlotte searched everywhere, and did not find any cabinets or rooms that could be opened by the green key. It was difficult for him to discover the secret of the green key by himself. The key was very old, and perhaps Harry knew how to use it. As the sky darkened, Harry walked out of Norman's room like a zombie. He came to Norman's study, and stayed in the dark room for a long time. He thought a lot that night, and the burden on his shoulders made him breathless. Helplessness, fear, and loneliness replaced the sadness in his heart. At night, Charlotte on the rooftop rested his hands on the back of his head. He looked up at the moonlight, and listened quietly to the crying coming from the study. There is no real empathy in the world. Norman's death was a big blow to Harry, but Charlotte just had some feelings. He was Harry's best friend, but there was not much he could do for Harry. Secretly notified the butler to bring Norman's body back, that's all. And even if Norman didn't die at the hands of the mysterious man, he had to find a way to curb Norman's actions. For Norman, death is not terrible. The most terrible thing is that he is afraid that he will go crazy and hurt Harry one day, although he has done that before. For Charlotte, it is the best result that Norman didn't die at his hands. He spent this night with his friend. Until the next day, the sun shone through the window on Harry's side face, and the warm feeling made him tremble slightly. After a night of rest, he forced himself to cheer up. Seeing John carrying breakfast in, Harry exhaled and said, "John, father's secret cannot be leaked. Announce to the outside world that he is recuperating due to illness, and leave the affairs of the group to me." His eyes became firm. After being protected by his father for so many years, it is time for him to protect the Osborn group that his father cherishes. In John's gratified eyes, Harry turned on the computer to search for all the information about the Green Goblin. Among these information, the latest news about the Green Goblin is the battle with Spider-Man a few days ago. Soldiers with shields, arrows that explode, and the toughest Spider-Man. He calmly analyzed this information, trying to find out who killed his father. His father's fatal injury was a hole in his chest. He watched the video of the scene and found that neither the shield soldier nor Spider-Man had the ability to break the defense of the armor. So the murderer should not be them. And they didn't catch his father that day. Harry, the autopsy results are out. At this time, John's cell phone rang, and he got the latest news. The hole in your father's chest was not caused by an explosion. The murder weapon was a weapon similar to the claws of a beast. Beast? Harry frowned. What kind of clue is this? Oh, there is this. John took out the green key. When I was cleaning up this morning, I picked this up by Norman's bed. It should be the clue I missed. What is this? Harry took the key and seemed to think of something. He hurriedly searched in the study and finally found a palm-sized black treasure chest in the safe. Harry subconsciously smiled when he saw the treasure chest. When I was a kid, my father often played treasure hunting games with me. I could always find it, but he would hide the key and often cheated. The beautiful memories were fleeting. He restrained his smile, used the key to open the treasure chest, and found only a mobile phone inside. What did my father want to tell me? He took a deep breath and turned on the video on his phone. Harry, my child, I'm sorry. When you see this video, I'm already dead. Now I can't control myself, and I can only leave this thing for you when I'm slightly sober. In the picture, Norman's face is haggard, but he still narrates with a smile on his face. You have always wondered why I spend most of my time and energy on experiments and was unwilling to return to my family. Your mother left me for this matter, and you resented me for it, but I had to do it. I tell you, now that it is because of the genetic disease of our Osborn family. It will begin to torture us after the age of 40 until we die. You are the same, but you still have time. I have exhausted all my efforts to develop a genetic serum to treat genetic diseases, but it has a big flaw. It has made me fall into the abyss, and I will never be redeemed. So you must not use it, but I believe you can perfect it. All the data is in my laboratory, and you know the password. Child, please forgive me for leaving so hastily. I can't hold on any longer. I hope you can live happily forever, but some things are beyond your choice. Please forgive me for being an incompetent father. Harry, I love you. The video ends here, and Norman's face is forever frozen in the phone. Harry looked at his father in the phone and couldn't come back to his senses for a long time. Family genetic disease. Is this the real reason why his father took the risk? His eyes turned red, and he finally understood his father. At the same time as the video ended, Charlotte also received a video file from an unknown account. Charlotte, congratulations. If you can see this video, it means that you have been successfully transformed into a superhuman by the mutant spider. Norman's first words startled Charlotte. Did he become Spider-Man because of Norman? He continued watching. Yes, I know your father. We used to be very good friends. He showed me his research results, which is to breed mutant spiders for human genetic modification. I was inspired by this and found a way to treat the genetic disease of the Osborn family, which is genetic modification. Genetic experiments are difficult, and I have never given up, but I have to admit that I'm not as good as your father. My genetic experiment failed, and I became a crazy monster. During the time when I became crazy, I did a very crazy thing. After your father disappeared, I stole the mutant spiders bred by your father. I wanted to copy his research results, but I couldn't do it. So when I was crazy, I put the only mutant spider left next to you and let it bite you. You don't like spiders, but you have no choice. You may die or become a monster, but I believe in your father. The mutant spider is bred with your genes, and it will give you power beyond the limits of the human body. This is something I can't do. I need a successful genetic modification case to help me perfect the genetic serum. I need you, Charlotte. Of course, this is what I think when I'm sober. If I completely lose myself, maybe I will regard you as an enemy, and then only you can stop me. At this point, Norman looked guilty. I know I'm selfish. I'm sorry. I can't control myself. Harry doesn't know anything about this. I hope you can still be best friends. As Harry's father, I want to remind you that if someone invites you to join a strange organization, don't agree. It's very dangerous there. Very dangerous. The picture stopped abruptly, and the video file was automatically deleted. Charlotte fell into deep thought. The missing father, the strange organization SHIELD. He instantly thought of the Avengers. Is the mysterious man who killed Norman related to this? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 15. The troublesome Spider-Man dies again. After learning the truth about how he became Spider-Man, Charlotte felt relieved. As for his missing father or the danger from S.H.I.E.L.D., these secrets will be revealed to him as time goes by. What he can do now is to keep getting stronger, cherish the people around him, and try to live every day well. The process of getting stronger is bound to lead to death, so he should accumulate enough opportunities to restart first. Thinking of this, he jumped off the roof with a somersault. As soon as he landed, a familiar greeting came from behind Charlotte. Hey, kid from Queens, are you here to find the Green Goblin too? Huh. Charlotte turned around and saw Steve and Natasha, who were dressed in casual clothes, looking at him with strange eyes. Hey, why are you here? Charlotte asked knowingly. The spider sense was sometimes effective and sometimes not, which made it difficult for him to find out how many agents were lurking nearby. Steve stepped forward and said, "We know that Norman is a Green Goblin, so we came here to find him." Charlotte was a little curious. It's been 2 days and you just found this place. Natasha folded her arms and smiled. Mr. Spider, please don't underestimate our intelligence system. Now is the best time to come. Hearing this, Charlotte knew that he could no longer hide it. Okay, is there anything I can help you with? What you can do to help us is to stay out of our way. Steve glanced at the vehicles approaching the villa area, turned to Charlotte and said, "We received news that Norman is dead, so this place is handed over to us next." Charlotte scratched her head. Well, in this case, I really have no reason to stay, but you know young people are very curious. The Green Goblin is dead. What are you doing here? Don't tell me you are going to take his body away. It's inhumane and illegal. As a friendly neighbor Spider-Man, I will not allow you to do this. Okay, I'm leaving. He slowly raised his hands and said to Natasha, "Can you put down the gun in your hand?" Natasha shook the gun in her hand, smiling and said, "Are you interested in talking to me? What do you want to do?" Charlotte put his hands on his chest. "I've just become an adult, can't you? An old dove. Let me go." No, 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 sorry, please put your gun down. That's not what I meant. I've heard him call you that. You should point the gun at him. He pointed at Steve, and the other was confused. What? Steve, is this true? Natasha's face was gloomy. She hated it most when people mentioned her age. Although Steve was usually serious and didn't seem like someone who would say such things, she knew that Steve used to be an American soldier. Those soldiers had no quality at all, and they would be assimilated if they stayed there for a long time. Steve felt something was wrong, and he quickly raised his hand. "No, listen to my explanation. Don't listen to his excuses." Charlotte put one hand on her waist and pointed at Steve with the other hand, saying, "Men's words can't be trusted." Steve gritted his teeth. "Queen's kid, don't make trouble." "I swear I didn't. I'm just a child, and good children don't lie." "Spider-Man, you're such a bitch. Look, he's getting anxious." "I didn't, Steve Rogers. You have to explain." "I'm explaining. That's not what I said." He said, "I can guarantee it with Spider-Man's integrity." He said that in his heart. After Charlotte said this, she suddenly raised her hand and shot spider silk, and the weapon in Natasha's hand was swept away by the spider silk, and Steve's shield was also hung high on the eaves by the spider silk. What? The two were caught off guard and their weapons were removed, and they had an ominous premonition in their hearts. The next second, the red and blue figures approached. Bang! Charlotte punched out, and Steve only had time to cross his arms. The force of more than 10 tons burst out with a terrible impact. Steve was shocked by Spider-Man's strength, and then was swept into the wall by this force. Shit. Natasha's face changed. Before she could use her best Brazilian jiu-jitsu, the spider silk had already locked her ankles and hung her upside down under the eaves. After doing all this, Charlotte clapped her hands. Sorry, actually I'm a bad boy. After saying that, he shot the spider silk and jumped onto the roof and took away Steve's shield. Damn, what a cunning spider boy. Steve crawled out of the hole in the wall and he looked up at Natasha with a dusty face. I really didn't say such a thing. Do you believe it now? He raised his hand to sweep off the gravel on his shoulder and felt a dull pain in his arms. Natasha turned her face away. Even if you didn't say it, you have thought about it, and thinking about it is also a sin. Steve. On the other side, Coulson and a group of agents broke into the villa. Mr. Harry, here are our documents. Norman Osborn has been charged with 11 crimes including endangering public safety and intentional homicide. We are going to take his body away now. What? Before Harry could react, he saw a group of agents rushing into the room to take away the body. Wait, you can't do this. He's already dead. You can't do this. I'm going to sue you. Sorry. We have legal procedures. You bastards. Harry rushed forward to stop them, but was ruthlessly pushed down. He gritted his teeth at the mysterious agents, and the bloodshot in his eyes spread rapidly. I know what you want to do with my father's body. He roared. My father was tortured by illness and squeezed by the company's shareholders when he was alive. Even after he died, you took him to the laboratory for research. Why can't you let him go? He's already dead. Dead. He rushed towards the agents frantically, but was still ruthlessly subdued. No, please. Please. Harry, who was pressed to the ground, was filled with tears. He watched the body being snatched away, and the feeling of powerlessness made him almost suffocate. Coulson was a little hesitant when he saw this, but he still carried out the order firmly. Sorry, this is my mission. The moment he finished speaking, a red and blue figure flashed outside the window. Hey, are you the legendary suit thugs? Spider-Man. The agents were shocked. Before they could make any move, Charlotte shot spider silk from her wrist and grabbed the body. Coulson's face was ugly. Spider-Man, are you going to go against us? And the agents did not hesitate to take out their weapons and pointed them at Charlotte. Seeing this, Charlotte shrugged and said disdainfully, who cares? He looked at the embarrassed Harry. If the righteous good neighbor Spider-Man helps you get your father's body back, can you give me a like in the comments section? Harry's eyes were filled with hope, and he said happily, thank you, Spider-Man. You're welcome. The next moment, gunfire raged, and Charlotte raised his shield to protect himself. Ding ding ding. Sparks flew everywhere. With the impact of the bullets, the red and blue figure threw down the shield, turned over and jumped down, carrying the body, and flying towards the nearby woods. Chase. Yes. The agents took emergency action, but Charlotte had already disappeared into the woods. Hover sound of the wind passed by his ears, and Charlotte flew through the treetops one after another, thinking about how to avoid SHIELD and return the body to Harry. Suddenly, there was a roar from the sky above his head. The unreliable spider sense did not warn, but Charlotte smelled the breath of death. Oops. Boom. The next moment, the jungle where Charlotte was located exploded violently. The fire covered the earth, and the violent heat wave destroyed all traces. Mission accomplished. The troublesome Spider-Man has disappeared forever. Chapter 16. Old Captain America, Infinite Black Widow. In the vast universe, on a huge spider web. Congratulations on receiving the invitation to the resurrection match. Will you participate in the resurrection match? Yes, no. Looking at the familiar prompt message, Charlotte sat up from the spider web, puzzled. No, is this guy sick? Bombing bugs with missiles. What kind of rich idea is this? After a while, Charlotte clicked yes. Since we are dead, we should be at peace. The most urgent thing is to become stronger through the resurrection match. Only with strength can we take revenge. Ding. You are entering the resurrection match scene. You have 12 restart opportunities. The void devoured Charlotte's body, and the next moment he came to New York under the night sky. Scene: Marvel Comprehensive Universe, Mission 1. Go to the Afghan desert to rescue Tony Stark, who was kidnapped by the Ten Rings. Mission 2. Go to the Afghan desert to prevent the contestants from rescuing Tony Stark, who was kidnapped by the Ten Rings. Reward 1 resurrection quota. Reward 2, strength plus 10 tons. Participants: Charlotte Parker, Peter Parker, Steve Rogers, Natasha Romanoff, Norman Osborn. This mission will be divided into 2 teams, and the players are automatically matched. Matching successful. Old, weak, sick and disabled team. Mission 1. Charlotte Parker, Steve Rogers, Natasha Romanoff. The vicious team. Mission 2. Peter Parker, Norman Osborn. The team wins, and each player can get a resurrection quota x1. 3 minutes left to start the mission, 24 hours left to end the mission. Then, the scene of Tony being kidnapped appeared in front of him. The sun was scorching, and the yellow sand whistled past. The air was hot, and the gravel was hot, but Charlotte's heart was cold. As one of the old, weak, sick and disabled team, he had an ominous premonition. On his left was the sexy and charming Black Widow, whose superpower was to delay aging. On his right was a skinny old man with wrinkles all over his face and white hair. He was wearing a loose Captain America uniform and holding a shield. His eyes were cloudy and dim, and his hunched body seemed to be half buried by the yellow sand. In the next second, Charlotte was silent. It was indeed the old, weak, sick and disabled team. Compared with the 2 Peter Parkers in the evil team and the super scary Green Goblin, his team really had no chance of winning. It was almost impossible to rescue Tony with the intervention of the other team. Charlotte felt depressed. Beside him, the elderly Steve was stunned for a moment, and then when his eyes fell on Natasha, his old face suddenly trembled. "Natasha, is that you?" Natasha was also confused, and her memory was still stuck at that moment on the planet Vormir. "Steve." She frowned, and the old man in front of her gradually overlapped with the handsome captain in her impression. "It's me. I'm glad to see you again. It's amazing. What happened? Is everyone back?" They came back, but Thanos followed. In the end, Tony snapped his fingers and sacrificed himself. What? Impossible. The original plan was for Banner to wear the Infinity Gauntlet. You two, this is a resurrection match. We should talk about how to win this match. Charlotte couldn't help but interrupt the 2 people's reminiscing. The team was weak to begin with, and it would be impossible to complete the rescue mission if they delayed any more time. He already knew that the 2 people in front of him were Captain America and Black Widow in Avengers 4. Hearing the voice, Steve noticed Charlotte. "Peter, you are here too?" He looked surprised. Charlotte's mouth twitched. "I'm not Peter Parker. My name is Charlotte. Charlotte Parker." He retracted the nanometal on his face. "Oh, I remember. Peter is not in this team." Steve slapped his forehead. Looking at the young man in front of her, Natasha was also amazed. Peter Parker is in another team, and there are 2 of them. It's incredible. Steve thought it should be the multiverse. Doctor Strange and I talked about it. Charlotte's face turned dark. "Did you hear what I said? This is the resurrection match." He interrupted again. Steve seemed not to hear. He said to Natasha, "You didn't come back for that operation." Everyone was very sad. "I know. Barton saw me jump. I feel very sorry. It was too cruel to him." "It's okay. I can see you again now." "Steve, you are old." "What happened later?" "After Tony died, I went back to the past to return the Infinity Stones, but I chose to stay in that time and space. I had Carter in my life, and I didn't break my promise." "Oh, congratulations. You have no regrets." "Yes. 70 years later, I handed the shield to Sam, and I finally retired. But it seems that only dead people can come in here." "Am I dead?" Steve finally reacted. "I just remember that I was very sleepy that night, and then I lost consciousness. It turned out that I was dead." He didn't have too many emotions, as if he had expected his death. Then he looked down at his equipment and couldn't help covering his face. "I haven't worn this uniform for a long time." Natasha teased. "The muscles have degenerated a lot. I don't know how much strength you still have." Steve raised the shield. "You can try." His old face was still confident. He looked at his side. Charlotte Parker, we can start. Hey, where's the person? Steve was stunned when he didn't see Charlotte. Is he gone? Natasha looked around, then looked at the valley in the distance, pointed at Charlotte's running back and smiled. This Spider-Man can't wait. Steve was a little embarrassed. We have wasted too much time. Natasha shrugged. It doesn't matter. We are the Avengers. We must have confidence in ourselves. She took out her pistol. Yes, it's been a long time since I felt excited. Steve stretched his muscles and was eager to try. Although I'm not interested in resurrection, if this game is real, I will definitely let you go back. Me too. The two smiled at each other, and then the fire in the sky roared. Boom. There was a violent explosion in the desert. Charlotte, who heard the movement, turned around and saw the two disappeared in the sky full of flames. His heart finally died. The evil team has already started to act, and the first move was to use the missiles of the Ten Rings gang to bomb the scene. 2 teammates died, and now he was the only one left. As expected, they were all going to be wiped out this time. The spider silk could not lock onto the soft hill, but Charlotte's running speed was not slow. When approaching the valley, a familiar figure suddenly jumped down from the sand dune. Boom. The heavy object fell to the ground, the sand and soil splashed, and the hideous green lizard man slowly walked out of the dust. Charlotte Parker, we meet again. Please read on, and give me your monthly votes. Chapter 17 The Old, Weak and Sick Team, take off. Charlotte paused. Lizard Parker? One of the Peter Parkers was an old acquaintance, so who would the remaining Peter Parker be? It's me. Lizard Parker rubbed his hands. His bones made dense crisp sounds, and his eyes were full of cold light. I gave you the chance, but you didn't cherish the chance to revive at all. You useless person. I shouldn't have handed Gwen to you at that time. Go to hell. Lizard Parker burst into endless anger, and when he jumped up, he rolled up violent sandstorms with a terrifying momentum. There was no Gwen Stacy in this universe, and Lizard Parker showed his most ferocious side. The monster attacked, and Charlotte knew that he was not as strong as the opponent, so he had no intention of fighting hard. Swish. He fired spider silk with both hands to cover the opponent's eyes. Taking advantage of the moment when Lizard Parker lost his target, Charlotte turned sideways to avoid the flying monster, and at the same time turned over and jumped onto Lizard Parker's back, using the force to jump up. Swish. The spider silk shot locked onto the lookout tower in the valley. Charlotte flew into the platform in an instant and kicked the guard off the platform with a clean and neat kick. Fire! Fire! The armed personnel on the ground received the order and immediately took up their weapons to vent violent firepower at Charlotte. Da-da-da. The fierce machine gun locked onto the red and blue figures that kept flying. Occasionally, bullets hit Charlotte's body and left some nano-metal debris. Obviously, the defense of the battle suit can only resist small caliber bullets. The bullet drilled into the muscle, and the nano battle suit soon oozed blood. Charlotte's movements became slower and slower. Bang. The next moment, the Green Goblin on the flying skateboard rushed over, and the specially made Green Goblin darts kept shooting. Puff puff puff. The dense cold light flashed, and Charlotte's pressure increased suddenly. He was accidentally knocked into the wooden shed on the ground by the high-speed Green Goblin. Boom. Dust filled the ruins. The Green Goblin looked down at Charlotte, and a sharp blade popped out of his wrist. Ha ha ha, good boy, we meet again so soon. What a surprise. Hearing this, Charlotte ignored the severe pain all over his body, and his face was shocked. This tone is. The next moment, a cold light flashed, and he lost all consciousness. You have been eliminated, and cannot get a place to revive. The reward is strength plus 0.2 tons. 12 chances to restart remaining. Do you want to restart? On the spiderweb, Charlotte regained all consciousness and frowned. He was almost certain that the Green Goblin he met in this resurrection match was Norman Osborn, who died in front of him 2 days ago. Norman became slightly sober before his death, but after his death, he entered the resurrection match, and his second personality completely dominated. Even if Harry was there, this guy probably wouldn't hesitate at all. Whether it was Lizard Parker or Green Goblin, they were both very difficult for Charlotte. Not to mention that there was still a Peter Parker who didn't show up. What kind of good guy could join the vicious team? His 2 teammates, one is the Black Widow with no obvious superpowers, and the other is the old and weak Captain America. No matter how you look at it, there is no chance of winning. Fortunately, there are 12 chances to restart, so he still has a chance. As his body passively increases 0.2 tons of strength, Charlotte clenched his fist and nodded slightly. After being eliminated this time, he was rewarded with double strength. No matter how small a mosquito leg is, it is still meat, which is better than nothing. Looking at the prompt message in front of him, he raised his hand and clicked to restart. The void swallowed Charlotte's figure. You have entered the resurrection match scene. In the desert scorched by the scorching sun, Charlotte looked around at the two people. Natasha? Steve? Seeing the two people start to reminisce, Charlotte did not interfere, but locked onto the valley not far away, waiting for the mission to begin. If he guessed correctly, the other party could borrow the missile weapons of the Ten Rings gang at the beginning of the mission, and their birthplace must be in the valley. As for how to make the leader of the Ten Rings gang obedient, this is not difficult for supervillains. From the beginning, the other side had an absolute advantage in terms of the strength of the team members and the environment they were in. With the help of the Ten Rings, it was not difficult for them to find Charlotte and the others. And his first step was to prevent Black Widow and Captain America from being bombed by missiles. After all, 2 more teammates meant a better chance of winning. He would not be a match for the 3 supervillains alone. While thinking, he found the desert off-road vehicle parked outside the valley, and he had a plan in mind. The 3 of them were about 500 meters away from the valley, so they should be able to do it. Beat the next moment, the mission began. Without waiting for the 2 to continue talking nonsense, Charlotte turned over and retreated, and shot Spider Silk with both hands, to lock the bodies of the 2, forcibly interrupting their reminiscence. What are you doing? The 2 were shocked. Take you up, go. The moment Charlotte finished speaking, the muscles in his arms suddenly tightened, his feet kept moving, and his body spun, while throwing the 2 into the air. 12 tons of power exploded, and under the powerful swing, the sand and dust rolled wildly, and the 2 people left the ground, as if they were on a rotating flying chair in an amusement park. Boom! The strong wind brought sand into the mouths and noses of the 2 people, and Steve was the first to be thrown hundreds of meters away under the intense weightlessness. Shit in midair, the old Steve cursed secretly. Although he still didn't understand what happened, he reacted instantly with the combat consciousness engraved in his bones. He slid 100 meters away by the friction between the shield and the gravel when he landed. After he stopped, he looked up and saw Natasha's figure flying from the air. The spider silk on her body was connected to another red and blue figure. Natasha. Peter. The moment Steve exclaimed, Charlotte suddenly raised her hand and pulled the spider silk, and Natasha, the flying man in the air, was swept into his arms. Bang! As the 2 figures rolled down the sand dunes, the next moment a loud noise shook the sky, and a terrifying heat wave swept in with yellow sand, instantly submerging the 3 people. Above the valley, Norman, who was riding a flying skateboard, was stunned when he saw this. Strange, how did he find out about my plan? At the mouth of the valley, Lizard Parker ignored the wind and sand and flew down. He couldn't wait any longer. Charlotte Parker, where are you, you idiot? He looked around for Charlotte, who was buried in the yellow sand. Behind the off-road vehicle not far away, 3 people were crawling in the gravel, watching Lizard Parker getting closer and closer. Peter. No, Charlotte Parker, how did you know they would use bombs? Old Steve asked with lingering fear. After this incident, he and Natasha no longer had the idea of reminiscing. Charlotte stared at Lizard Parker's movements and said without turning his head, Spider-Man has spider sense, don't you know? Hearing this, Steve and Natasha looked at each other. Does Peter have this thing? Natasha was puzzled. Steve thought for a while. I heard that Peter got this thing after being beaten up by Mysterio. Well, what about this big guy? Natasha looked at Lizard Parker, who was approaching step by step. Charlotte shook his head. We can't force it. There are 2 scary guys in the valley. We are no match for them. There is still 1 day before the end of the mission. Let's hide first. We need to make a feasible plan. I know a place. Old Steve seemed to have thought of something and pointed to the other end of the valley. Tony talked to me about it that year. After he escaped, he upgraded his armor and came back here for revenge, but he didn't find any trace of the 10 rings. He looked around and accidentally found an abandoned air raid shelter there. We can go there. Chapter 18 is the Venom Spider. After old Steve finished speaking, Charlotte decided immediately. Okay, let's go there. You guys drive to find the air raid shelter, and I'll hold him back. Natasha frowned. Wouldn't it be too conspicuous to drive directly? They can easily track our location. Trust me, don't worry about other things. The sooner you find it, the better. I have a plan. Charlotte said confidently. He couldn't delay for too long. Only when he found the air raid shelter, as soon as possible could he start planning again next time. Seeing Charlotte's confident look, old Steve believed it for the time being. He hadn't been a captain for many years, and his mind was empty after entering the resurrection match, so it was difficult for him to have substantive suggestions. Natasha was not very good at this either, but she still expressed her doubts. Little Spider, you seem to have a lot of experience in the resurrection match. Charlotte nodded. Yes, I played the resurrection match with this guy. He pointed at the lizard Parker. I won that time. And then you died again. Steve looked strange. Charlotte spread his hands and smiled. As you can see, I'm a Spider-Man who likes adventure. If you see a green demon next, please don't doubt that he knows me too. Steve. Natasha. Well, little Spider, you are even better at getting into trouble than the Peter I know. After the old Steve finished speaking, the tip of Lizard Parker's nose moved slightly, and he finally smelled the breath of a creature in the dry environment. Found you. He grinned and swooped towards the off-road vehicle. The next moment, the vibranium shield flew out and hit Lizard Parker's face back and forth in an instant. Bang 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 in the continuous muffled sound, Lizard Parker fell from midair. Shit, what is that? He covered his bleeding nose and cursed. The old Steve raised his hand to take the shield that flew back, took a deep breath and said, very good old friends still give face like this. I saw you secretly breathing. Natasha got into the off-road vehicle and started the vehicle. She teased without hesitation. Please be kind to the elderly. Old Steve smiled awkwardly. He quickly got into the co-pilot seat and then threw the shield to Charlotte. Little Spider, use this. I have already demonstrated it to you. Thank you, Captain. Why do I feel like you are scolding me? Old Steve smiled, then pointed in a direction. Natasha immediately stepped on the accelerator, and the off-road vehicle sped away. Charlotte weighed the shield in his hand. It feels much better than the shield I grabbed last time. Waste, you finally showed up. Lizard Parker spat out a mouthful of blood foam. His eyes were fierce, and while he stood up and rushed towards Charlotte, his claws hissed and cut through the air, emitting a suffocating cold light. Seeing this, Charlotte's right foot sank deep into the gravel, burst out with great force, turned around and threw the shield in his hand. Buzz in the movie, Steve Rogers' strength is about 5 tons. Charlotte's strength is stronger than Steve's. The shield he threw out rubbed against the air and made a harsh roar, which was obviously more powerful. But this time Lizard Parker was prepared. He slapped the shield and continued to kill Charlotte. Die. Lizard Parker's eyes were full of murderous intent, and the next second he was hit on the head by the shield flying back. Bang boom, the huge force hit. Lizard Parker staggered and fell to the ground. How is it possible? He covered the bulging blood bubble on his head and roared. Charlotte shot spider silk from his wrist to lock the shield, and the shield flew back and roared again. The effect was comparable to Steve operating the shield himself. Sorry, handsome lizard, I'm in a godly outfit now. He grinned. Ah. Damn it, I'm going to tear you apart. In a rage, Lizard Parker flew wildly again and again, and was hit by the shield again and again. The standing style of fighting made Charlotte taste the sweetness. This shield is more convenient than he thought. He seems to have found a new track. Soon, Lizard Parker fell to his knees with blood all over his body. The edge of the shield was much sharper than he had imagined, and he could not hold on any longer. Asshole, how long do you want to see? Suddenly, he looked up at the green demon, who was watching from the air, and roared, help me now. TSK TSK TSK, poor handsome lizard, you are really a fool. You exposed me, which makes it difficult for me to sneak attack successfully. Norman was riding a flying skateboard, and he flew over the heads of the two people at a high speed while speaking, dropping pumpkin bombs from the air. Asshole. Lizard Parker cursed at Norman's disregard for his own life and death, and pounced hard. At the same time, Charlotte followed Steve's movements, and shrunk into the shield. Boom. In an instant, Continuous explosions ravaged the sand dunes, and the flying sand swept across the sky and submerged the scene. After a while, the wind and sand were everywhere, and Norman wandered in the sky, trying to find Charlotte's body from it. Strange, why not? That kind of shield shouldn't be able to protect him. He swooped down and circled low in the sky to look for Charlotte. On the other side, the head of Lizard Parker emerged from the sand. Norman Osborn, you're looking for death. The furious Lizard Parker jumped out of the gravel and killed Norman with a grin. Haha, little green snake, I won't show mercy just because you have the same skin as me. Me too, you will be cruelly torn to pieces by me. Boom, the explosion started again, and Lizard Parker quickly crossed the edge of the explosion on all fours, and then jumped and knocked Norman down on the flying skateboard. Not far away, covered by the sand, Charlotte slightly propped up the shield above her head and saw this scene through the gap, thinking about something in her heart. These two guys are both mentally ill. They started fighting before the mission was over. They are indeed the vicious team, and they don't even let their own people go. In this way, they can be used. Thinking about it, while the fight between the two was getting more intense, Charlotte crawled forward, quietly got into the sand dune, and sneaked in the direction where Stephen Natashal left. Captain America's shield buffered more than 90% of the explosion power for him, which made Charlotte extremely envious of the weapons made of vibranium. If he had a set of spider suits made of vibranium, he would not be so timid in this resurrection match. He could single-handedly challenge the whole field. While thinking, he ran along the wheel tracks outside the valley. Whoosh, soon, the yellow sand roared in the wind, and the wheel tracks were quickly submerged. At the same time, the unreliable spider sense occasionally recovered, and it warmed the heart. Charlotte paused under the mottled rocks outside the valley. Behind him, accompanied by the sound of liquid wriggling, the breath of danger rose sharply. Charlotte turned slowly and saw that the man's eyes were in an inverted triangle shape similar to Spider-Man's. Bloodshot eyes were spreading in his pale eyes, his mouth was full of ferocious fangs, saliva was flying, and his long tongue was winding like a giant python. The black spider suit wrapped around his strong body, exuding a trembling and dangerous aura at all times. Venom Spider. Peter Parker, who was parasitized by the symbiote Venom, seemed to be different from the bully spider in imagination. Chapter 19, but not a bully. The moment he saw this guy, Charlotte slowly exhaled. His heart, which was always hanging in the air, died again. Friends who have been Spider-Man know that Spider-Man parasitized by Venom is ridiculously strong. Hey, do you like buying discounted suits? He asked tentatively. Venom Parker showed a grim smile, ready to make a move. I like to break bones. Charlotte smiled ugly. Okay, then do you want a promotion and a raise? He still didn't give up. You talk too much nonsense. I'm hungry. Boom. In an instant, Venom Parker's spider silk battlesuit squirmed and turned into a black liquid all over the sky, and in an instant it exploded into a huge black web that enveloped Charlotte. Puff puff puff, the shield swept across, and a hole was broken in the black spider web. The moment Charlotte jumped out of the encirclement, Venom Parker's arm had already turned into a 10-meter long sword and swept over. Boom. With a loud noise, gravel flew everywhere. The terrible force and the sharp blade split the huge rock into two in an instant. The exaggerated attack range made Charlotte unable to retreat. He only had time to block the shield in front of him, and he was blasted into the ruins of the rock by this irresistible force. In the ruins, Charlotte only felt that his bones made strange noises under the heavy load, and the pain was unbearable. The shield in his hand was also shaken away by the huge force. Neither the shield nor the nanosuit could resist the terrible power of Venom Parker. As the terrible shadow crossed the ruins and enveloped his body, Charlotte was stared at by the hungry monster and could only force out a smile. Parker, why don't I take you to fight Thanos? I want to eat you. Wait, no, you are serious? You have been eliminated and cannot get a place to revive. The reward is plus 0.2 tons of strength. 11 chances to restart remaining. Do you want to restart? On the spiderweb across the universe, Charlotte suddenly stood up and touched his head. This guy's definitely not the bully Maguire. He really loves food. Recalling the last scene before his death, Charlotte couldn't help swallowing his saliva. Roughly estimated, this guy's strength is at least more than 100 tons, and this is not counting the explosion. He is not an opponent at all. Not to mention him alone. Even if all the contestants of this resurrection match come together, they can't win. It's really vicious. The pressure suddenly increased. Charlotte thought about the next action and clicked to restart again. You have entered the resurrection match scene. In the scorching desert, Charlotte still had to listen to the two people's reminiscences again. Natasha, Steve. The mission began. Charlotte threw the two people away to avoid the explosion, and then it was a repetitive plot. Go to the air raid shelter. Boom, the off-road vehicle roared away, and the lizard Parker and Norman came one after another, and then they fought each other. Seeing this, Charlotte sneaked in the opposite direction of Steve. This valley is a circle as a whole, and he can also meet Steve and Natasha in the opposite direction. He wants to make sure whether the venom spider has been eyeing him for a long time. He did not take any precautions along the way, and relied on speed as the main thing. As long as something happened in the middle of the journey, his guess would be proved. Not long after, he saw the shadow of an off-road vehicle in the distance. It seemed that the venom spider did not target him. He walked quickly towards the off-road vehicle and glanced at the entrance of the abandoned air raid shelter that appeared in the nearby rock mass. The entrance was narrow, and a little arrangement was enough to conceal his whereabouts. In the car, Steve and Natasha were stacked together and did not know what to do. Charlotte. No way. Can we play here? The captain is old. Don't let him get away with it. He lamented that the world was going downhill, but when he got closer, he found that something was wrong. Where are their heads? With a shudder in his heart, Charlotte helplessly spread his hands. Okay, it should be my turn next. The next second, the black liquid squirmed and turned into a demon's face and appeared behind Charlotte, slowly devouring him. You have been eliminated and cannot get a place to revive. The reward is strength plus 0.2 tons. 10 restart opportunities remaining. Do you want to restart? The fourth resurrection match started, and Charlotte went through the previous plot step by step. Venom Spider initially targeted Steve and Natasha, so only one person could be sacrificed. After the off-road vehicle, Charlotte did not say anything nonsense. He simply outlined the map of the periphery of the valley. You go in two directions respectively, and the air raid shelter is probably here. How do you know the location of the air raid shelter? Old Steve looked surprised. Don't ask. Asking is superpowers. Charlotte found 2 barrels of gasoline from the car. Take it. It will be useful after entering the air raid shelter. Since the location of the air raid shelter was found, he did not let the two drive this time. After arranging everything quickly, he raised the shield to lure away Lizard Parker. Handsome full-egged lizard, come and chase me. This crunchy little bug, I'm going to tear you apart. The plan went smoothly. With the addition of Norman, Lizard Parker and Norman began to fight internally, and Charlotte took the opportunity to chase in the direction of old Steve. If he was a venom spider, eating beautiful women or old men, even a fool could make a choice. As expected, with his speed, he quickly caught up with old Steve. Ha hoo, you caught up so quickly. It's good to be young. Old Steve leaned on his legs and panted for a while. Charlotte took the gasoline barrel from the other party. Old soldier, do you want to play bumper cars? What? In the surprised eyes of old Steve, Charlotte turned the shield over and put it on the ground, motioning for the other party to sit on it. Seeing this, old Steve instantly understood. Although it's childish, I'm happy to accept it. He sat on the shield with peace of mind and watched Charlotte shoot spider silk to lock the shield. Hoo la, the gravel squirmed, and Charlotte dragged the shield with spider silk and slid quickly on the sand. The wind and sand soon submerged the traces of sliding, and old Steve's face gradually became excited. Hurry up, charge. Shut up, bastard. How can you scold an old man? 10 minutes later, Charlotte came to the air raid shelter. It's here. Natasha hasn't come yet. She may not have a chance. What do you mean? Go in and explain. Under Charlotte's urging, old Steve had no choice but to crawl into the entrance of the air raid shelter. Charlotte followed closely behind and then blocked the entrance with the gravel under his feet. The traces of the entrance will soon disappear as the wind and sand pass by. In the darkness, the sound of the wind and sand whistling became smaller and smaller, and a faint smell of decay penetrated into the nose. Charlotte clicked on the wrist device, and the spider logo of the nano suit burst into a strong light. Under the light, what caught the eye were the scattered wooden stakes and spider webs all over the ground. The piled yellow sand covered the calves, and the passage occasionally collapsed, but it was still able to accommodate 2 people. Now you can tell me why you didn't wait for Natasha. Old Steve looked serious. Charlotte patted the gravel on her body and said casually, she has been targeted. Then you deliberately let her die. Old Steve clenched his fists, his eyes full of anger. Don't look at me like that. Charlotte didn't care about the other's angry eyes. He said calmly, anyway, she died a long time ago. If we can win the resurrection match, then she can get a chance to be resurrected and return to your world. Do you think this is cruel? After saying this, the old Steve quickly calmed down. You did the right thing. Then when will I die? There is a chance. Just be patient and wait. No problem. Please read and vote for me. Chapter 20. It hurts. It hurts so much. The abandoned air raid shelter was not as humid as expected because it was located in a desert climate. Stepping over the piled sand, Charlotte ducked through a pile of rubble. The fallen wooden stakes supported the shaky passage, and it seemed that a little noise would cause the air raid shelter to collapse completely. But it has been able to hold on until now under the influence of missile bombardment, which is enough to prove that the quality of this shelter is excellent. Since it is an air raid shelter, it must be connected to the 10 Rings gang camp in the valley. The old Steve behind him said. Charlotte nodded. Yes, but this air raid shelter has been abandoned for too long, and the deeper passage may have collapsed. If we want to enter the 10 Rings gang camp through the air raid shelter, we may have to dig in ourselves. Hearing this, the old Steve was a little worried. We don't have a map, and it's hard to find the cave where Tony is. If we dig rashly, if we dig in the wrong place, we will be easily discovered. Don't worry about it. Just enter the 10 Rings gang camp and take a look to determine the approximate location. Take a look. The old Steve didn't understand what this meant. He said, the noise of the excavation will not be too small. I once heard Tony mention that there are at least 300 armed men of the 10 Rings gang, not counting the old, weak, women and children who are accompanying them. There are thousands of people scattered in the valley, and they have their eyes and ears in almost every place. As long as we show our heads, we will be discovered at the first time. Charlotte turned around and smiled. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. After saying that, the 2 of them had already reached the end. There was almost no gap in the pile of rubble in front of them. He stepped forward to carry the rubble. Let's get started. Old Steve observed for a while, then followed to carry the rubble. The 2 chatted while carrying. Will they really not find this place? After all, the big lizard seems to be very sensitive to smell. Old Steve said. Charlotte easily moved a large stone weighing several tons. I guess they may not waste time looking for our traces. After all, our strength is too weak. They only need to stay in the camp to easily win. Old Steve pushed the rubble with great effort, stood up and supported his waist in the middle of the way, and sweat broke out on his forehead. If I were them, I could easily get the information about the abandoned air raid shelter by asking the leader of the 10 Rings gang. Maybe I would have caught you by now. He began to pant. The older he got, the more his physical function declined, but he was still many times stronger than an ordinary person, so carrying these rubbles was no problem. But as the amount of exercise increased, the oxygen supply in the enclosed space was insufficient, which made him feel more and more exhausted. Seeing this, Charlotte spoke while tapping the spider logo on his chest, and the oxygen supply system of the nanosuit began to release oxygen. It's a pity that they are not you. The leader of the 10 Rings may have been killed by them long ago. Moreover, they all have mental illnesses to a certain extent, and will not think so much. This is our chance. Huff huff. Old Steve took a deep breath. I feel much better. Peter's suit also has this function. It was made by Tony himself for him. He looked behind Charlotte. Can you grow 4 metal spider legs? No, my nanosuit is just a damaged version. Then will your eyes turn red? No. How many hundreds of patterns does your spider silk have? Mine is not artificial spider silk. Wow, the body produces spider silk by itself. Very cool. Don't talk nonsense. I know you want to be lazy. Ahem, you found out. 3 hours later, old Steve was completely exhausted. I can't do it anymore. Help me rub my waist. He turned around and said with his hands on the wall. Seeing this strange posture, Charlotte refused without hesitation. Your excuse is too lame. You could have spent a whole day there back then. Old Steve's face darkened. I couldn't do it 20 years ago. Then you take a rest and leave the rest to me. Charlotte looked at the time. It's already night. Most of the rubble in front had been cleared, and it was almost time to move. He lifted his foot and picked up the shield at his feet and began to dig upwards. Crack, crack, crack. The edge of the shield was very sharp, and it could easily cut through boulders and concrete pillars. After a while, Charlotte dug a 5-meter deep hole in the ceiling of the passage. Puff! Suddenly, a strange stench poured into the passage. Seeing that the situation was not good, Charlotte immediately flew away, leaving only the old Steve, who could not dodge in time to roar. No. Ugh. You dug into a manure pit. Sorry, I'll try to go to the front. You bear it a little longer. I can't bear it. Old Steve rolled his eyes and fell into the manure, spitting white foam and twitching. Well, it's probably too late to save him. Seeing this, Charlotte closed his eyes and mourned for 3 seconds, then dug again 20 meters away. Kakabang! In the valley, the open space next to the ammunition depot collapsed, and the passing armed personnel exclaimed, "What is that? It looks like a person." The armed personnel quickly pointed their guns at the cave entrance, and the next moment they were knocked down by the flying shields. Enemy attack. The gunfire was brilliant in the dark night, and dense bullets enveloped the red and blue figures that leaped out of the cave entrance. Dang dang dang. Charlotte flew around the camp, using her shield to resist the dense gunfire. Sparks flew, and the bullets bounced off the shield and shot into the ammunition depot, causing a violent explosion in an instant. Boom boom. Amid the loud noises, bullets flew around, and the violent flames devoured lives, overturning the simple wooden sheds one after another, and a serious riot suddenly broke out in the camp. No. Retreat. At the entrance of the cave, Norman rode out of the flying skateboard. The green tail flame flashed in the night sky for a moment, and then rushed towards Charlotte in the crowd. Ha ha ha, little Charlotte, I've been waiting for you for a long time. As Norman grinned, the flying skateboard under his feet popped out of the gun barrel, ignoring the violent firepower of the 10 Rings gang members present. Da-da-dang dang dang. Sparks burst out from the shield, and the reflected bullets rushed towards the chaotic crowd. Screams came one after another, and large pieces of splashing blood dyed the ground red. Bang. The next second, the skateboard under Norman's feet was hit by the flying bullets, and the flight system was immediately shaky and burst into thick smoke. Oh, my good luck is over. Norman remained elegant, and then fell down with the flying skateboard, and crashed into the sea of fire with a bang. Charlotte Parker. Then, Lizard Parker rushed out of the cave with a ferocious face. He ignored the bullets flying along the way and ran wildly, subconsciously raising an arm to block the way. He didn't want to be hit in the face by the shield this time. Seeing this, Charlotte saw him twisting his body and making a standard bowling action. The shield in his hand turned into a wheel spinning at high speed and rubbed against the ground to produce sporadic sparks. Puff. The sharp shield flashed under Lizard Parker's crotch, instantly bringing up a splash of blood. Oh. The shrill scream was deafening. Lizard Parker's pupils trembled, and he knelt on the ground and covered his crotch with his face full of pain. Pain. Too painful. Chapter 21. Nightmare difficulty? No, it's hell difficulty. Charlotte walked past Lizard Parker quickly and casually shot her spider silk to grab the fallen shield into his hand. What level of villains are you? You're still going to attack one by one? He patted the other's shoulder. Remember to wear iron pants next time. He raised his shield to block the incoming bullets and rushed into the cave. Lizard Parker, with bloodshot eyes, pounded the ground hard. He was sweating profusely. He wanted to get up, but it would cause the wound to move. The severe pain made him unable to get up to intercept Charlotte. Damn it, I will tear you apart. With an angry roar, Charlotte rushed into the cave and swung his shield, knocking down a large number of armed men in the cave. With a shrill scream, he grabbed a member of the 10 Rings gang with his backhand. Take me to find Tony. Other man, whose throat was pinched, had his eyes wide open, his face flushed, and he slapped Charlotte's hands with both hands, unable to speak at all. Seeing this, Charlotte was full of admiration. As expected of the 10 Rings gang, any member has the spirit of fearlessness. As he said that, he threw the opponent away, then rolled up the rifle with spider silk and pointed it at everyone. Can anyone tell me? Over there. Everyone quickly pointed in a direction. They are all psychopaths. They can't afford to offend. Okay, thank you. Charlotte threw down the rifle and just turned around and found that the passage in front of him was blocked by the inky black spider silk. The black liquid quickly spread to the rough stone wall, and the evil pale eyes quickly enlarged in the darkness. Wow, a very cool way to appear. Charlotte was amazed and then threw down the shield. We are all Spider-Man. Give me face, friend. Friend delicious. You have been eliminated and cannot get a resurrection spot. The reward is strength plus 0.2 tons. 9 chances to restart remaining. Do you want to restart? The 5th resurrection match, the air raid shelter. I can't do it anymore. Help me rub my waist, looking at Steve, who turned around and supported the wall. Charlotte ignored him. He looked up at the ceiling and calculated the distance. Should we dig from here? Steve asked. Charlotte shook her head. No, there's a manure pit above. How do you know? Steve was surprised. Don't ask. Asking is a superpower. Your superpower can sense shit? Old Steve was shocked. Charlotte, ignoring the naughty old man, the moment he closed his eyes, a comparison map of the route between the air raid shelter and the 10 Rings gang camp emerged in his mind. 20 meters ahead is the ammunition depot, and 90 meters to the right front is the location of the cave. The air raid shelter passage cannot lead to that place and needs to be dug again. The route of the cave is unknown, and the underground is all hard rock. It will take a lot of physical strength and time to dig. It's not so easy to be a gopher. There are only 18 hours left. Only if he finds Tony's exact location first, he may have time to do this. With the shield in hand, Lizard Parker and Norman are not a big threat to him. Although the Venom symbiote is strong, it has a fatal weakness: sonic attack and high temperature flame. After the explosion of the ammunition depot, Venom Parker did not appear immediately, perhaps for this reason. With a plan, Charlotte hung the gasoline barrel on his waist and started digging. It was still an ammunition depot. What is it? Enemy attack. Da bullets flew, the ammunition depot exploded, and the scene was in chaos. Ga. Little Charlotte Norman just flew out of the cave with a grin, and Charlotte threw out his shield without looking back, accurately hitting the aircraft under the opponent's feet. What? The Green Goblin exclaimed, and then fell into the sea of fire with the flying skateboard. Not challenging at all. Charlotte fired Spider Silk to retrieve the shield, and soon waited for a familiar roar. Charlotte Parker. Lizard Parker followed closely and flew out. Before he landed, he saw the shield rubbing against the ground and sparks, and rushed all the way to him. Puff. Oh. Charlotte said earnestly when passing by the kneeling and wailing Lizard Parker. I've already reminded you to wear iron pants. What? Looking at Charlotte's back as he walked away, Lizard Parker gnashed his teeth. When did this guy remind me? In the cave, the shield flew around and knocked down the armed men who rushed over. Turning to face the inky black spiderweb, Charlotte had no expression on his face and threw the gasoline barrel at Venom Parker with his backhand. Boom, sparks flew from the collision between the shield and the stone wall, and the cave suddenly ignited with raging flames. The flames quickly spread to the black spiderweb, and the black liquid struggled and twisted in the sea of fire. The piercing hissing echoed in the cave, causing a stinging pain in the eardrums. Seeing this, Charlotte's confidence suddenly exploded. It worked. But soon, the black liquid spread rapidly in the sea of fire, and the flames became dimmer wherever it passed. What? Charlotte was shocked. This thing was almost about to overcome its nature. Immediately, he rushed into the passage without hesitation, knocking on the pipes quickly along the way, to make a sharp sound. Ding ding ding, shock instantly. The black liquid affected by the sound waves twisted again, and Charlotte took the opportunity to pass through the black spiderweb and rushed into the dark cave. Until the end of the cave, he finally saw the room blocked by the iron door. Bang, raising his hand to smash the door lock with his shield, Charlotte kicked the iron door open and saw the embarrassed figure tied to the iron frame at a glance. Tony Stark. Charlotte recognized him at a glance. At this moment, Tony had already fainted. His face was covered with blood, the light of the reactor on his chest was slightly dim, his whole body was seriously injured, his hands and feet were twisted to varying degrees, and it was obvious that his limbs had been broken. Explosives were tied to his feet, and the bloody countdown was exactly the time for the mission to end. Seeing this scene, Charlotte's face was ugly. In order to increase the difficulty of rescue, the three guys were simply crazy. At this time, the thin bald man came to Tony with a cup of water and fed the water to Tony's mouth with a numb expression. "You are here to save Tony. I know you are not the same as those guys," he said. The nano mask retracted, and Charlotte nodded. "Are you Dr. Ethan?" Ethan's eyes moved slightly. "You know me." He was a little surprised. Of course. If it weren't for Dr. Ethan, then Tony would not have been able to transform into Iron Man. Charlotte stepped forward to look at Tony, who was motionless. "How is he?" he asked Ethan. Ethan shook his head. "They asked me to take care of Tony. The purpose is to let him survive for 24 hours. The situation is very bad." He pointed at Tony's back. "Tony is hopeless, and so am I. Both he and I will die here." He sighed. After Ethan's reminder, Charlotte discovered the iron nails that were nailed into Tony's body. "This thing has barbs. Once there is any movement, it will instantly affect Tony's nerves and cause him to die immediately." Ethan's words made Charlotte completely desperate. "I thought the nightmare difficulty was outrageous enough, but I didn't expect it to be hell difficulty. Nini is dead." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 22, Black Widow's Professional Skills. Looking at Tony's half-dead appearance, Charlotte took a step forward. He planned to try it himself. Wait, at the moment when Ethan opened his mouth to stop him, Charlotte had already reached out and moved Tony slightly. Immediately, the iron nails pulled the nerves, and Tony's body trembled violently. A lot of blood oozed out of his mouth and nose, and the wounds all over his body burst instantly. The next moment, Tony spit out a mouthful of black blood and there was no movement. "Charlotte, try and die. So this is what it means. You have been eliminated and cannot get a place to revive. The reward is plus 0.2 tons of strength. 8 chances to restart remaining. Do you want to restart?" The cosmic spider web, the familiar power poured into the body. Charlotte stood up and stretched his muscles, thinking in his heart. Tony's body was tampered with, and it was difficult to rescue Tony without being able to move him. No wonder Lizard Parker and Norman underestimated the enemy and did not rush in as soon as they found him. Facts have proved that, as long as the villains are cruel enough, no one can defeat them, unless they are more unscrupulous than them. After thinking again and again, Charlotte had to give up rescuing Tony through the tunnel. This method has completely failed. The Marvel world has black technology that ordinary people can hardly imagine. It is not impossible to remove the iron nails behind Tony. The key is that it takes time. Digging the tunnel has wasted most of the time, and what Charlotte lacks most is time. "I can only try other methods." Charlotte made up his mind and clicked to restart again. The 6th resurrection match. Under the scorching sun, the three appeared in the desert. Listening to the conversation repeated many times by the two, Charlotte's ears have been calloused. "Take you to take off to amid the howling wind." The three hid behind the off-road vehicle in the flames of the explosion. The explosion swept the sky with wind and sand, and the Lizard Parker was looking for the figures of the three in the sandstorm. "Charlotte Parker, you useless person. Get out of here. Give me the shield. I'll stay here to hold him back. You guys go to the air raid shelter and wait for me." At the back of the car, Charlotte handed the gasoline in the car to the two. "Pour the gasoline on your body." "What?" Natasha frowned. "It's dangerous to do this in the hot desert." Charlotte patiently explained. "We are being targeted by a terrible monster, and the gasoline can cover up your breath. If he is picky about food, maybe he can escape this wave." After restarting continuously, his patience was forced out. Without patience, it is impossible to communicate. After all, they don't have the previous memory, and explanation is necessary. And he is not very sure about this method, otherwise he would not have sent Natasha to die several times. Next, Black Widow can finally come in handy. Natasha and Steve looked at each other and decided to trust Charlotte in an instant. It is not good for anyone to betray their teammates. Immediately, the two poured gasoline on their bodies without hesitation, and then turned around and ran towards the air raid shelter mentioned by Charlotte. The next moment, Lizard Parker smelled the strong smell of gasoline and immediately rushed towards the off-road vehicle with a grin. I found you. You hit a wall. If you found me. Multiple restarts made Charlotte not have to aim at the opponent at all. He followed the muscle memory of his body and threw the shield in his hand. As expected, Lizard Parker, who was no longer Charlotte's opponent, began to call for support. Help me quickly. Ha ha ha, you idiot, the Green Goblin attacked, and it was still the familiar lines and familiar scenes. Boom. Under the bombing of the pumpkin bomb, Lizard Parker and Norman began to fight each other, and Charlotte took the opportunity to leave the battlefield. Not far away from the rocks, he found the gasoline barrel left by Steve, casually smeared some gasoline, and rushed to the air raid shelter. Perhaps Venom Parker didn't like the smell of gasoline, and Charlotte found the air raid shelter without any danger. Success. Seeing Charlotte enter the cave, Steve's face was happy, and he hurriedly moved the gravel to block the entrance of the cave. In the dark air raid shelter, the spider logo on Charlotte's chest glowed brightly. Glancing at the two people who were not injured, he breathed a sigh of relief. Very good, that guy is greedy, but he is still picky. There is enough food in the valley, and the reason why Venom Parker targeted them is not entirely because of the hostile relationship. Of course, the brains of ordinary people are not as delicious as those of superheroes with superpowers. Once the three of them turn from delicious food to stinky tofu, Venom Parker will give up chasing them. Black Widow did not die in this operation, so there will be one more person to clean up the air raid shelter next. After 3 hours, most of the rubble pile in the air raid shelter was cleared. Looking at Natasha and Steve, who were resting against the stone wall, Charlotte put away his nanosuit, took off his original clothes, and threw them to Natasha. Little brat, what do you want to do to me? Natasha looked strange. Don't think too much, I'll just treat the old man. I should shut up now. Charlotte felt that he should change this bad habit. He put on the nanosuit again, and said to the two, the next plan is to sneak into the Ten Rings camp through the air raid shelter and disguise as one of their people to blend in. You have more experience than me in this regard. Speaking of lurking, Natasha smiled confidently. You're right, but I don't need your stuff. She took out professional makeup tools from her collar. Contestants carry their exclusive props from their lifetime. Charlotte's spider suit, Steve's shield and uniform, and of course Natasha does the same. In Charlotte's surprised eyes, Natasha kept taking out various professional props necessary for agents from her tight uniform, which opened his eyes. Where are these things usually hidden? In one word, absolutely. Wait, what should I disguise as? Just as she was about to start, Natasha suddenly froze and asked Charlotte habitually. After all, under Charlotte's command, they have avoided several waves of disasters. Charlotte raised her hand and clicked on the nano device, and the figure of a blonde girl emerged in the virtual screen. Try to be as similar to her as possible in appearance. No problem. Natasha immediately put on makeup, then tore off her tights and patched them up with secret agent props to disguise herself as a refugee. During the process, Natasha did not hide anything, which made the scene somewhat indescribable. Charlotte swore that he really didn't like watching these, but in order to help Natasha check for possible flaws, he could only force himself to continue watching. By the way, can those green fabrics be used to make a pair of green ballet shoes? Charlotte suddenly asked. Natasha was puzzled. Does it have to be ballet shoes? Not necessary, but it would be better if there were. Okay, I can try. With that, Natasha continued the needlework in her hands. At the side, the elderly Steve frowned, wondering what the use of these things was. Can you tell me about your detailed plan? Of course. The next chapter may be at 10 p.m. Chapter 23. Long live the four-legged snake. The temperature in the valley dropped at night, and the bright moon was gradually covered by dark clouds. At the Ten Rings gang camp, the armed personnel were on alert at all times. The land behind the ammunition depot quietly collapsed into a circular pit. Charlotte already had rich experience in digging tunnels, so this process did not alarm anyone. Little spider, how is the situation? Steve asked in a low voice in the cave. Charlotte made an okay gesture to the two people in the cave. No problem. As he said that, he climbed up the cave in trance and reached out to pull Natasha and Steve up. The three of them crawled on the ammunition depot, looking back and forth at the patrolling armed personnel. We need 2 sets of clothes like them. Steve said. Charlotte stared at the passing armed personnel. Don't worry, leave it to me. After speaking, he suddenly shot Spider Silk to lock the last 2 people in the patrol team. Other 2 people who were violently dragged groaned, and they subconsciously pulled the trigger. Da-da-da, the gunfire roared in the night sky, and the valley suddenly became lively. Enemy attack. Charlotte. Looking at the resentful eyes of Steve and Natasha, he grinned. Sorry, I don't have experience. Try again. You have been eliminated and cannot get a place to revive. The bonus is plus 0.2 tons of strength. There are 7 chances to restart. Do you want to restart? The 7th revival match. Behind the ammunition depot, Charlotte poked his head out and carefully observed the passing 10 rings members. When the time is right, shoot Spider Silk. Seize the gun, seal the mouth, and arrest people. All the actions are done in one go, but the speed is not fast enough. Enemy attack. The camp was in chaos, and Charlotte's face was dark. The 8th revival match. This time, Charlotte did not act rashly. He had found that he was not suitable for this kind of thing. A first-line hero could not do such a sneaky thing. Hey, change into this quickly. In the dark, the old Steve tiptoed to Charlotte's side. He handed the clothes to him, but saw that Charlotte's face was a little wrong. Little Spider, are you feeling unwell? He asked curiously. Natasha guessed it should be because he spit out too much Spider Silk and is weak. Charlotte. He looked at the clothes in Steve's hand. How did you do it? Steve looked bitter. I'm old. It took some time. Don't mind. Charlotte's mouth twitched. It's okay. I forgive you. The 2 quickly changed their clothes and then smeared camouflage on their faces. Okay, Mr. C, you can go with us. Charlotte escorted Natasha out of the ammunition depot in a dignified manner, and Steve followed closely behind. Stop, who are you? I have never seen you. At this time, the patrol officers passing by instantly discovered something was wrong and stopped the 3 people with weapons in hand. Before Steve could speak, Charlotte had already strode forward. He whispered in the ear of the patrol captain, and the other party's face immediately changed, and he obediently made way. Let's go. Charlotte waved his hand, and Steve immediately escorted Natasha to follow. What did you say to him? Steve was curious. Charlotte said expressionlessly, long live the lizard. Steve. Wait, this line is a bit familiar. Natasha lowered her head and tried hard to hold back the smile on her face. Captain Steve, you have done this kind of thing before. Thinking of what happened in the past, Steve couldn't help laughing. Yes, sometimes words are more lethal than violence. He said, on the surface, the lizard man, who is a monster, must be the most terrifying guy they think. Pretending to be his subordinate, even if they suspect him, they dare not do anything. That's right, you can react faster next time. Charlotte said. Okay. Soon, the 3 came to the entrance of the cave, and were stopped by the guards as expected. Without waiting for Charlotte to speak, Steve spoke first. Long live the lizard. Charlotte. The reaction was really fast. Guard. The guard was confused. Is this a new password? At the same time, in the cave, Lizard Parker and Norman walked out of the prison room one after another. This will definitely be fine. Norman laughed wildly and then threw the bloody blade in his hand at his feet. The scales on Lizard Parker's face twitched slightly, and it was obvious that he had not yet recovered from the shock just now. The scary green devil. Haha, I like people to call me the scary green devil, because I'm scary. Are you as scary as that guy? Lizard Parker pointed at the shadow in the corner. Norman looked back at the corner, and occasionally heard the sound of sucking liquid vigorously, which instantly made his smile stiff. Damn, this guy is scarier than me. No, I want to be like him. Ugh. Halfway through his words, he suddenly leaned against the wall and vomited, obviously unable to be similarly scary. This guy likes people's heads. Lizard Parker subconsciously stayed away from Venom Parker in the corner. He had never seen such a ferocious Spider-Man. Fortunately, this guy was not in the enemy team, otherwise he would be eliminated again in this resurrection match. Thinking of the process of being eliminated last time, Lizard Parker gnashed his teeth. That hateful Spider-Man named Charlotte Parker actually took advantage of his feelings for Gwen. What a damn bastard. What is the sacred and pure feeling in his eyes? This time, I must tear that guy apart and win this resurrection match. He swore that he would never fall for the same trick again. He was not a fool. Long live the four-legged snake. Suddenly, the shout from the cave entrance made Lizard Parker look ugly. I hate it most when people call me a four-legged snake. If you add the word handsome, I will tear you apart without mercy. He strode towards the cave in trance. Damn guy, who is that? Lizard Parker just roared, and the next second he was stunned. He opened his mouth and showed an incredible expression. In front of him, the pitiful blonde woman curled up on the ground, and the green ballet shoes on her feet instantly evoked his memories. In countless nights when Spider-Man appeared, the pair of green ballet shoes never left her. The next second Steve's voice pulled him out of his memories. My lord, this is a dinner we sent you. Dinner? Lizard Parker looked at Steve in front of him, and did not recognize him. The wind and sand outside the valley were too strong during the day, and he didn't see Steve and Natasha clearly at all. Charlotte lowered her head. Lizard Parker was not to the point where he could recognize Charlotte, even if she turned into ashes. Suddenly, Lizard Parker thought of Venom Parker and immediately swallowed his saliva. I won't eat you. He looked back at the darkness behind him, as if he was worried that the scary guy was hungry again. He quickly pulled Natasha out of the cave. Seeing this, Steve and Charlotte looked at each other, and then silently followed Lizard Parker. What's your name? In the simple wooden shed outside the cave, Lizard Parker had completely lost his previous ferocity. He gently put a coat on Natasha. Natasha was worthy of being a senior agent. She looked at Lizard Parker with fear on her face. Her eyes were weak, and hiding a hint of stubbornness. She whispered, Gwen. Gwen Taddery. Hearing this, Lizard Parker's body trembled. Gwen's parallel time and space isotope? Such a thought popped into his mind. Chapter 24. Defeat them one by one. Peter Parker. In the wooden shed, Natasha followed Charlotte's instructions and broke through the defenses of Lizard Parker. Charlotte stood outside the wooden shed, silently watching Steve wandering around the camp. Because of Lizard Parker, Steve was free to enter the camp, and no one dared to question this strange face. Norman and others only used force to force these people to do things for them, but did not explain the specific details. They did not know the existence of Steve and Natasha, so Charlotte had an opportunity. After a while, Steve returned to Charlotte. It's ready. Old Steve whispered. Charlotte glanced at the green figure flying out of the cave. This guy is cunning and suspicious. Be careful not to be discovered by him. Understood. Steve looked back at Natasha. She may have to sacrifice. He said something. No, Lizard Parker likes pure love. Charlotte said firmly. Steve shrugged. Okay, I thought too much. Why can Black Widow conquer Hulk? Do you know the reason? Charlotte asked suddenly. Steve was stunned. Pure love? He said uncertainly. Charlotte glanced at the bewildered Lizard Parker and nodded seriously. That should be the case. Letting her deal with the lizard is simply a dimensionality reduction attack. But I think it's cruel to the lizard. If you see Tony's look, you will know what cruelty is. What do you mean? You will understand. The two chatted for a while, and then saw Lizard Parker pulling Natasha out of the woodshed. Don't worry, I will definitely take you away from this place. Lizard Parker said gently to Natasha. He looked at Steve. Get the car ready, I need to go out. Before Steve could make any move, a flame roared above his head, and Norman squatted on the flying skateboard and laughed strangely. Ha ha ha, the mission is not over yet. Where do you want to go? Lizard Parker glanced at the other party. Anyway, we have already won, and I will do my own thing next. Norman looked at the timid Natasha, tilted his head and laughed. I understand. She is a captive here. You want to send her away from this damn place before we leave. What a thoughtful boy. None of your business. Lizard Parker glared at Norman, then pulled Natasha and turned away. Charlotte and Steve hurriedly followed. Norman saw this, and had no intention of intercepting them. Stupid, you will die in the hands of a woman sooner or later. He sneered, then turned around, and went back to the cave. On the other side, Charlotte drove Lizard Parker and Natasha away in person. Boom, the off-road vehicle roared out of the valley, and sped quickly in the desert in the dark night. My lord, it takes 10 hours to drive to the nearest city. Steve, who was in the co-pilot, said. 10 hours? Lizard Parker breathed a sigh of relief. It's good that we made it in time. He was about to comfort Natasha, but he accidentally caught a glimpse of the explosives and metal shield in the carriage. This is that guy's shield. In an instant, Lizard Parker's pupils trembled, and a chill ran up his spine. "You bunch of liars." 20 minutes later, a loud noise suddenly came from outside the valley. What happened? Norman flew out of the cave to ask, and one of the Ten Rings members immediately came forward to report. There was an explosion outside, and we found a person wearing a red and blue tights. "It's little Charlotte." Norman laughed. "Finally appeared. Where is he?" "To the east. There is an abandoned air raid shelter." "Air raid shelter?" Norman grinned. "So they hid there. Great. You want to lure me over there? Then I'll play with you." After speaking, he flew on a flying skateboard towards the direction pointed by the Ten Rings member. After Norman left, the Ten Rings member looked up, and it was Natasha in disguise. In less than 10 minutes, Charlotte and Steve returned to the Ten Rings camp from the air raid shelter. "It's done." Charlotte found Natasha. Natasha was a little surprised. "So fast?" Charlotte shrugged. "Of course." Steve on the side held a mottled shield. "As long as we destroy his aircraft first, he can't be our opponent when we work together." Natasha smiled. "It's just like what Spider-Man said. The Green Goblin is very cunning, but also very arrogant. He knew it was a trap, but he still went alone." Charlotte glanced in the direction of the cave. "Norman is very confident in himself. He bets that, even if we kill him, we can't win the resurrection match. He wants to give us a fatal blow when we see hope." Hearing this, Steve frowned. "Why is he so sure that he will win?" Natasha looked thoughtful. "I have a very bad feeling." Charlotte smiled. "It doesn't matter. We have already dealt with 2 opponents, and only the scariest guy is left in the cave." "Yes, I'm already preparing." Natasha pointed to the electrical equipment piled up in the corner. "The ultrasonic device is very simple. I will dismantle these things first. It will take about an hour to make it, provided that your method is really useful. As expected of a senior agent. Hurry up." Charlotte gave Natasha a thumbs up. An hour later, Natasha finished the ultrasonic device, while Charlotte and Steve were equipped with the flamethrowers of the Ten Rings gang. Behind them, a group of armed men looked at the 3 people's actions in confusion, not understanding what they were going to do. "Have you noticed that the big lizard and the green demon have not come back?" "Yes, I feel that these 3 guys are not right. They went in, and that terrible monster will eat them. See what they are going to do." Under the scrutiny of everyone, the 3 walked into the cave at the same time. The lights in the cave were dim, and the 3 slowly walked into the depths. The deeper they walked, the more gloomy and cold they felt. The bloody smell spreading in the air made Natasha feel uncomfortable. So she turned on the ultrasonic device without hesitation. Buzz in an instant, the high-frequency sound waves of 20 kHz spread rapidly, and a sharp hissing sound suddenly came from the top of the 3 people's heads. "Shh! Up there!" The moment the monster hissed, Charlotte and Steve immediately turned on the flamethrower and released blue flames towards their heads. Boom! In an instant, the cave was illuminated by fire, and the black spider web above his head was rapidly twisted under the dual effects of high temperature flames and ultrasound, and Venom Parker's scream became more and more creepy. Compared with the temperature of gasoline burning, the high temperature flames sprayed by the flamethrower are more lethal to Venom, but this alone is not enough to deal with the terrible enemy. And last time, Charlotte discovered that, although Venom Parker has a strong resistance to flames, he is extremely sensitive to sound waves. This time with a more professional ultrasonic device, Venom Parker's strength has been weakened to the extreme. Charlotte can even vaguely see the figure wrapped in the symbiote struggling. "Peter Parker, please read and vote for me, please." Chapter 25. Ninny can't die, and Satan can't take him away. "There's someone in there. I saw it." The moment Steve exclaimed, Charlotte fired spider silk without hesitation to lock onto the figure in the black liquid. Ugh. Instantly, Peter Parker let out a painful wail, and his struggle became more and more intense, but as the venom was firmly attached to his body, he didn't have any chance to escape. Use the ultrasonic power to the maximum. Charlotte gritted her teeth and dragged while Steve swung his shield, but it was unable to cause effective damage to the black liquid. It's already the maximum. Natasha's forehead began to sweat. She had never seen such a terrifying monster. She quickly adjusted the ultrasonic device, and the hissing sound of the venom became more and more shrill. Shboom. The next moment, the black liquid bombarded the cave wall, and the rubble flew down from the sky. While destroying the ultrasonic device, The venom took the opportunity to wrap Peter Parker's body again, and his body turned into a ball of liquid and rushed out of the cave. He ran away. Steve picked up the shield and panted, "What on earth is that thing?" Natasha wiped the sweat from her forehead. "It looks like a monster in a movie, an alien monster." "It is indeed an alien creature." Charlotte didn't explain too much. He said to Natasha, "Make a few more similar ultrasonic devices later to prevent that guy from coming back again." "I understand." Natasha looked outside the cave. "What about those people?" Steve raised his shield. "If they want to attack us, I will deal with them." He had observed the camp before. As long as their ammunition depot was detonated, the 10 rings would be in endless trouble and would have no energy to deal with them. Soon, the 3 of them came to the end of the passage. When they opened the iron door, they saw Tony, who was tortured to the point of being completely exhausted. Stark. Seeing the familiar face, Steve's old face was full of complicated expressions. He hadn't seen this face for 70 years since the final battle. He quickly came to Tony's side and looked at the shocking wound in front of him. Steve was shocked at first and then subconsciously turned his head away, unable to bear to watch this scene. Although he knew that the Tony in front of him was not the same person as the Stark he knew, he felt very uncomfortable when he saw him in such a miserable state. They did it. They are so cruel. Natasha's face was full of pity. She reached out to touch Tony, but finally gave up. He must be in pain. Steve took a deep breath. Yes, is he going to die in front of me again? At this time, Ethan came over with numb eyes. He is hopeless. Look at his back. 3 minutes later, Steve and Natasha looked extremely ugly. As Avengers, don't you have any way? Charlotte asked. Natasha shook her head. There is no way at all. We are not doctors, and there are no professional surgical props here. Ethan sighed. That demon will not let him live. Charlotte looked at the time and shook her head. It seems that this is the only way. Go find the symbiote. As he said that, he walked out of the cave quickly. He didn't want to use this method until the last minute, but he had no choice. Unfortunately, in the remaining time, Venom Parker disappeared without a trace. The mission failed. You have been eliminated and cannot get a chance to revive. You will be awarded plus 0.2 tons of strength. There are 5 chances to restart. Do you want to restart? The 9th revival match. According to the original plan, the 3 of them will deal with Lizard, Parker and Norman in turn. In the cave, the ultrasonic device released high-frequency sound waves, and Venom screamed and fled. Boom. In an instant, the ammunition depot in the camp was detonated, and a violent heat wave swept across. The violent sound forced Venom back into the cave. Don't let him run away. Charlotte shouted, shooting spider silk to lock Peter Parker in the black liquid. Behind him, Steve and Natasha didn't understand why they had to catch this guy, but they still acted according to Charlotte's words. Boom. Steve shuttled through the camp with a shield in his hand, constantly detonating more explosives. Natasha threw the sonic device directly into the black liquid, causing the wriggling Venom to become more severely distorted. "Shno. He's mine." Venom roared and dragged Peter Parker tightly. Puff. The next moment, the spider silk broke, and Venom swept Peter Parker away and rushed out of the encirclement. Seeing that this method was ineffective, Charlotte chose to restart without hesitation. 4 restart opportunities remaining. Do you want to restart? Restart. The 10th resurrection match. Don't let him get away. Boom. This time, the ultrasonic device enveloped the cave, and the explosion directly blocked the cave entrance. No. He's mine. Seeing Venom desperately dragging Peter Parker's body, Charlotte gritted her teeth and rushed towards him in the horrified eyes of Steve and Natasha. "Little spider. Danger, haha, you are mine." Venom grinned and turned into a huge spider web to wrap up Charlotte, who was rushing towards him. At this moment, Charlotte seemed to be in a cold space. He was almost suffocated and felt strange liquid drilling into his body, constantly eroding every inch of his nerves. All kinds of crazy thoughts flashed through his mind one by one. Suddenly, Venom seemed to have sensed something, and the squirming black liquid suddenly threw Charlotte out of his body. "Ha ha ha, I know what you want to do. I won't let you succeed." Venom laughed, then turned around and broke through the hole and disappeared into the night. Seeing this, Charlotte, who was thrown behind, was helpless. I didn't expect that when the symbiote parasitizes the host, it can share the host's memory to a certain extent. Miscalculated. Continue. There are 3 chances to restart left. Do you want to restart? Restart. The 11th resurrection match. This time, Charlotte rushed towards Venom with explosives. Soon, his body was invaded by the symbiote. The moment when Venom was about to detect his purpose, he detonated the explosives without hesitation. Boom. In the explosion at close range, Venom and Charlotte were forced to separate. Venom Parker broke through the hole and escaped. Charlotte's body was also swept into the stone wall by the heat wave. While seeing Charlotte fall and spit out a mouthful of black blood, Steve hurried forward to check the situation. "How are you?" Charlotte just opened his mouth and his body twitched violently. The remaining symbiote cells in his body began to regenerate and repair themselves frantically. Then, a strange black liquid oozed out of his skin and quickly spread to cover the nanosuit, rendering it into a cool black and gold color. At this moment, Charlotte, who was parasitized by the symbiote, felt that his whole body was unobstructed, and the injuries caused by the explosion were quickly healed by the power of the symbiote. Under the power increase of the symbiote, he felt stronger than ever before. He succeeded. Using himself as bait, Charlotte finally obtained the symbiote cells. But this is not his ultimate goal. His goal is to let Tony also obtain the symbiote cells. I will read everyone's comments. The consumption of restart times will be gradually improved later. Please feel free to read. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.